everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres,
Yar.
Adam Vitale,
Hello.
Chao-Min Wu,
How's it going?
and joining us today, we have Mikhail Benani.
Hey, how's it going?
So Mikhail last joined us on the Game of the Year episode for 2024, which we published in early January. He's here today to join us with Josh to talk about the main topic of this week's podcast, which is, of course, the release of Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. So we're going to have Josh and Mikhail take point on that discussion first off. James might be here later. He did have a couple previews that he put up on the site, so we'll flag him in when he shows up. I think he just had a personal conflict. So we'll wave him in when he shows up. But yeah, we also have a lot of other previews that have went up. One for Xenoblade. We have a couple for Atelier Yumia. And then of course games we've been playing section here with Pirate Yakuza and the recently released Trails Through Daybreak 2. So this episode is going to focus more on games we've been playing or major previews, hands-on opportunities that we've had, and a little bit less on news. There's a couple news things, but actually a relatively news light episode today. So that's going to be the focus here. So without further ado, of course, the recent release is Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. And I'll hand it over to Josh to start out, who wrote the review for us. But Mikhail's also had early access with the game. And I know that those two have been going back and forth with their impressions, things, what they feel about the game, guides and things like that. So I'll hand it over to Josh to talk about Majima's solo Like a Dragon game.
Yeah, so RGG Studio continues to release new titles pretty much every year now, and so for at least early this year, they released this. This kind of is a weird one because while this technically not a Gaiden title in the West, in its Japanese name, it does have the Gaiden moniker. So it is they're kind of iffy 50-50 on like whether this is kind of like in the Like a Dragon Gaiden canon sub-series that the man who erased his name kind of pioneered before Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. So just to remind people, the man who erased his name came out after Yakuza Like a Dragon, but before Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. And that was meant to kind of link the two games together with showing what Kiryu was doing behind the scene during the events of Yakuza Like a Dragon, and serves as like a prologue for him and Ichiban being that dual protagonist in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. So what happens in The Man Who Erased His Name is very much important to both of those games. And with Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, it is in that same vein where it is sort of like a spin-off, but it is canon because it does take place after the events of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, several months after. So you kind of see the fallout of the finale of Infinite Wealth. It doesn't like recap like in game like the specific like events or whatever, but like things like what happened with like the Palakana cult, for example, is touched upon very much in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. So this is kind of an odd game in a lot of ways. You kind of see it already in the title.
Can I just chime in and say it's over the last couple of years, it feels strange that like the Japanese and the Western launches, they changed the titles to go from Yakuza to Like a Dragon to try to align the naming convention. We no longer have the long delays that we had like for like Yakuza 4 and 5 era. And now it seems strange that they worked on that, and now they're dropping the Gaiden title that's in the Japanese. Like it just seems like they were aligned, and now they're diverging in a small way, admittedly. But it's like, okay, it's a Gaiden title in the Japanese name.
Yeah, I'm really curious, like behind the scenes, like what talks they had in terms of like we'll keep the Gaiden in the Japanese name but drop it for the West. I don't know. Maybe they fear that like more people in the West will get scared off if they see Gaiden buy it. It's like, oh, do I have to play the previous one to get into this one?
Actually, now that I think about it, was Infinite Wealth like was it named differently in Japan too? I know Yakuza Like a Dragon, of course, was Like a Dragon Whereabouts of Light and Darkness or something. So maybe the titles never really were quite aligned. They've always been a little off. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's I don't know, it's a weird one. But yeah, as you can see in the name, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is already strange just from the get go. It's like, what the hell's going on? So the central premise that starts this game is that you see much like how you've seen in other JRPGs, you see the main character who is now Majima washed up ashore on the beach, and he has no memories. He's a young boy named Noah, new to the series, uh, pretty much saves his life because he discovers him. Majima sees that he has water. He's dehydrating. Um, obviously, before he collapses again, he basically takes Noah's water and so forth. And this leads into Noah taking Majima to a settlement on this island called Rich Island. You meet Noah's like immediate family members that lives with him, dad Jason and his older sister Moana. This goes into like a whole like I even mentioned in my review, right? Like the first hour of this game made a very poor first impression on me because like you're trying to find a way off the island. Eventually you do because you eventually stumble upon a pirate ship. But before then, the game introduces you to some really weak quasi survival elements of like, oh, you can go plant stuff here in these places where you can like put plant these seeds, and you have to wait real time for them to sprout. You know, okay. And then it introduces you to a cookie mini game. It's very light stuff and like basics of the combat system, which is a beat 'em up again. So like they're trying to establish just like since this is kind of like a quote unquote Gaiden game. Um, like in the Man Who Erased His Name, they are making this a beat 'em up, not a turn based RPG like the mainline series right now. So this is very much like that old school Yakuza gameplay, except that it does have a few tricks up its sleeve. Like Majima can now manually jump in combat, and it's like that's a weird thing to think about, and like it's not something that you would really care about. I guess I'd say as much. Like if you just think about it has a jump button now, and you can jump in combat. But then it's like, man, there's been like how many of these games that have been beat 'em ups, and none of them have ever had a jump button. So why start now? And but it's cool for Majima because Majima is unlike Kiryu, um, the speedy, agile character archetype. He's not the Kiryu is a big, brawling, very powerful, um, all that stuff. And there's been other, playable characters in the beat 'em up games like Saijima, Akiyama, etc. But no one really filled like that archetype that Majima does. Is very, very quick and agile, armed with a knife and his fists. So him having his jump combat or a jump button uh, kind of emphasizes that style. Like, hey, you do combos into an air launcher, and you can jump up and follow it up, and it's all very quick, like punches and knife slashes, and all that stuff. So that's like one of the first things they like introduce to you right away. Eventually, you get your pirate ship, introduces to you to naval combat. Naval combat, like I mentioned in my review, it's fine, it's serviceable. It's not my favorite thing. I remember when Adam was talking about East 10 Nordics um, uh, previously. And he's like, I don't know if I've ever liked the game, or I don't know what qualifies as good pirate or naval combat in video games. Um, and I kind of feel the same way on Adams. I don't know what qualifies as good naval combat or in these games because, like for this one, it was like I kind of wish it was a little bit faster. There's nothing really to really speed it up except for like these like um, boosts that you get. It's like activating NOS in Need for Speed games, and but it never it only that's like this acceptable speed for me. When you're not boosting at all, it's slow as shit. There's no way to upgrade like the base speed of the ship except of just like getting more of these NOS consumables um, that you can continually boost to maintain the acceptable speed. And then of course the basic combat like pirate ship is like you try to align like the sides of your ship to the other ship so you can fire off your cannons, which you can eventually upgrade to other weapons like flamethrowers or lasers, which is fun, insane. And you also have machine guns at the front that, like, hey, if you're directly in front of you, you can fire off machine guns and all that stuff. But it's whatever, you know. When you're outside of combat, though, you can follow like these currents. Like I think about like Spider-Man 2's like a traversal where you have like these circle rings that you can like swing through in the game or like glide through, and you get a lot of speed. This
And
one
when you
you do
say
get,
Spider-Man 2, do you mean
yeah,
like
the PS5
Insomniac? Or
Insomnia.
okay,
Yeah,
because I'm
right,
sitting here a
right.
fossil and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
PS2, like
you're
the
right.
movie.
You are right. Yes, that is good clarification. Forgot that's
I'm sorry
uh,
for being old.
it's okay. I get you. I enjoyed that old Spider-Man 2 as well. Um, so yeah, I mean that's okay. I don't want to ramble on too long. I want to get Mikhail's, but first impressions, what your overall like kind of expectations of the game, and I guess what you came away with as you played through the game. And Mikhail.
Yeah, so first of all, the Gaiden subtitle thing, when they announced it as that, I kind of expected it to be a super short game because I think when I mainlined Gaiden on when I first played it, I think you can beat it in under 10 hours if you just do the story because there was side content in that game, like with the mini games and stuff, but there wasn't a lot. And when both of us were playing Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, I think like the opening was kind of weird for me as well because in the trailers they've shown Honolulu and you can do so much stuff, but the opening was very restricted. And like you said, the survival mechanics were really weird. The cooking mini game was fun, but I don't like that planting stuff at all. Like I'd never do that in these
I
games.
totally forgot about it. Like after like
Yeah.
first like hour after we got off that,
Yeah.
I barely ever interacted with it ever again.
Yeah, so as once you get the ship and stuff, I was also wondering when we'd get access to like some of the DLC which we had, but that's a separate thing. But once you get access to the ship and you start, the naval combat was, I'd say, better than I expected. It's basic, it is serviceable, but I went into it expecting the worst because I feel like in these games they nail some aspects of it, but the other stuff which is tacked on just feels awful to play. Like you remember when Judgment just came out, the tailing missions was such
Oh
a
yeah,
pain. Like
the
it
tailing
it was
mission.
like yeah, it was like when I played Insomniac's Marvel Spider-Man with the trademark, the PS4 game. I was enjoying it. It was like a good open world game. Swinging around is fun, and then you had those Mary Jane stealth sections, which was the
Oh
worst
yeah,
shit I've played. And then I thought, they're gonna like when they did Miles Morales, I thought surely they aren't gonna bring that back, but they did something similar. And then okay, maybe in the next mainline game, nope, they just gave her a
they
like
doubled
a
down.
what is it? Yeah,
Like a
and
does
they
like a
gave her
taser gun,
yeah, yeah, they gave her a
stun
stun gun
gun.
or something, but
Yeah,
they still had the stealth, and I was like, this would be like Tears of the Kingdom adding that stupid Yiga clan hideout nonsense again. But thankfully, that stealth stuff didn't bother me like it did in Breath of the Wild. But yeah, so I felt like the naval combat might be just really bad, and I'd want to avoid doing it. But yeah, the NOS like Need for Speed was funny because I thought of the same thing when I was playing it, and I just found the whole naval aspect pretty interesting because you know how they have those what do they call those the devil flags, right? The
yeah.
super powerful I think like I'd say they were the equivalent of the clan in Judgment or Lost Judgment. I forget which one. The powerful clan which had the purple like
Yeah,
angry symbol on the
the
map.
first judgment. Yeah, the one
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
with
So
the rupee on the map. Mm.
yeah, so it kind of reminded me like that, and I thought, yeah, going to these treasure islands and finding the stuff is like kind of like a mini dungeon and stuff. I enjoyed that. Then I put it on hold because I was like, I want to try out the other mini games. And when I played Infinite Wealth, Karaoke and Sicko Snap were my favorites. So I was glad to see both of them back. And like Sicko Snap they changed the location of the Sickos, right? On the route which you're on. I think there were three routes again.
Yeah.
I'm not actually, yeah.
Mhm.
So it wasn't the same as how they did it in Infinite Wealth. So I was happy about that. And I was surprised that they
For
actually
anyone that
recorded English.
needs
Yeah.
context, Sicko Snap is like the Pokemon Snap analog where you take photos of strangely dressed men. In case
Yeah.
anyone knew
They
that.
get strangely dressed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I was doing the karaoke, I was surprised that they actually did full English karaoke for even the older songs because, Infinite Wealth had English karaoke, but it was, I don't remember if it was for the all the old and new songs because Infinite Wealth I played in Japanese, but when we got our review code for this one, what happened is the Steam version had the English dub from the start, but the console version, which I was also playing on PS5, it was going to come in a patch a few days later. So I decided to just try it out in English, and I messaged like in our Discord chat as well that I'm going to play it in English and hope something bad doesn't happen later. And I ended up sticking with it all the way, and I was impressed with the English dub throughout. The karaoke was nice and stuff.
I saw so the voice of Majima in English is Matt Mercer, right?
I
Yep,
believe
yep,
so.
yep.
And I saw him actually posting on Blue Sky or whatever. He was excited about the game's release and talking about like, I hope you like the karaoke because he went all in on that. So
That's
Yeah.
cool. That
So
yeah.
So the one thing about the karaoke, which is a little disappointing, I think like Sega and Atlas do this or have been doing it for a while. So the soundtrack for Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii released on streaming and digital services, but they only have the Japanese karaoke over there. They don't have the English version. So this might be like a licensing rights thing with voice actors and stuff. But like this just reminded me of how when Persona 4 Golden came out, on Vita, it only had English voice acting, right? I think the dual audio was new for the PC port
yes,
later.
I
So
think during that
when
time
they
they have
had,
storage issues, I think, so they didn't really
yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah.
put the dual audio.
So when they had True Story, when I played it, I only had the Laura Bailey English version. So when I bought the soundtrack on CD, because I think back then Atlas didn't know what digital music was. So I was like, "Where's the English version?" And I think that's just happened over and over again, where you never get the English version on these soundtracks. So that's a little bit disappointing because, like Matthew Mercer said, he did a really good job with the karaoke. So that
So wait, do we
was.
actually get to hear 24-hour Cinderella in English for the first time, or that's not part of the deal?
Yeah, I think
No,
so.
no, no. Whatever songs are there, they have English versions as well. If you play with the English dub, but if you use like when you listen to the music while exploring using your smartphone music player, it only has the Japanese versions. It's a little inconsistent over there.
Yeah, so the
But
karaoke
yeah.
mini game
Anyways,
itself will have the
yeah,
English versions. It's just
yeah,
like the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I also saw a post that one of the tracks you can listen to, not the karaoke, but you can listen to is Angry Birds. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep,
Yep.
yep,
There's
yep.
there's a lot of like Sega, like technically Sega owned property and IP now in there. So you have Angry Birds. You have like I think you have like one track from Persona 3 Reload and SMT5 Vengeance in there. You have like really old Sega stuff there. Like I had the Outrun on. There's like a lot of like variety of like IPs that they have under their umbrella now and represented in the game. Even like the mobile stuff like Angry Birds. It's kind of cool, but also very strange. And there's also like it like in world advertising, like real brands like advertising in game, like for very specific parts of it, like in Dragon Kart mini game. I believe there was like AMD like advertising in those tracks playing that. And I was like, that's weird.
Is that why the game runs better on AMD than NS?
Maybe, maybe. So I guess yeah. Since you mentioned that,
Yeah, we should talk about that.
yeah, I mentioned in my review I have a 3080 graphics card, and my CPU is like an AMD 5900 or whatever. I forget. And like it didn't happen for me for like the first maybe 8 to 9 hours ish in the game. But after some point, the game would start crashing only in like in specific cutscenes if the game was on for like 3 to 4 hours. And I had to go, reboot the game and do that. But I kept on like by the time I was done with the game, I finished it. I came away with like 6 crashes, and like 3 to 4 of those crashes were like in the last like third of the game, which was really annoying. And it supposedly like I was like, I don't know if this is if this is isolated to me because I was talking to Mikhail and Mikhail saying, "Oh no, it's running fine for me. It didn't crash for me." So I'm like thinking, it's like, is it just like a specific issue for me? I have no idea. So I did state that in my review. I don't know what was going on at the time, why it was crashing, and then when the full game is now out, several people have been experiencing similar crashes in similar context situations where like it crashes in the cutscenes, and I think you investigated a little bit, Mikhail, of like was there
Yeah.
like some sort of like DLSS issue or something?
So the demo which they released, which they didn't like, I think they just surprise announced the demo and released it a little while after that. When that came out on PC, people had crashing issues when they enabled DLSS on their NVIDIA GPUs, obviously. And what either happened is the game booted up with just the map loaded and everything else was black, so you just saw the mini map, or it was just crashing for people using DLSS. And I thought, they'd fix this because they mentioned that they would. And what happened is when, like, I think the demo had released after we had finished the game. I'm forgetting the timeline with the amount of releases. But so what happened in the end is when you played the game, you had the crashes and you have an NVIDIA GPU. But in my case, I just played it on my Steam Deck and ROG Ally. And both of them are just AMD. And I ran into zero crashes. And I played like more than 30 hours now across both of them, I think. So yeah, that is an issue which affects the NVIDIA, like anyone who uses an NVIDIA GPU, and I'm pretty sure that's the majority of people now. So
It
hopefully they
is.
do fix it.
Yeah. Hi, James. Hello. Welcome to
Yeah.
the podcast.
Yeah, I did say I was going to be about half an hour late. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're good. So yeah, we were just talking about
PC port issues with
Yeah.
Pirate Yakuza. Yeah.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've released a patch yet, as far as I know, at the time of recording. Address
Yeah.
that.
No, this is just the day one patch which we had access to in our review build on PC, and it hit consoles like about a week ago or something like that. But yeah, at least on PS5, I don't know when it came to Xbox, but yeah, so that's the only patch which is released so far, as far as I'm aware, as of this recording.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
besides the mini games and stuff, like just to not get into like hardcore spoilers and stuff, but I feel like this, like they called it a Gaiden game in Japan, which obviously means it's going to be on the shorter side, but they are charging, well, not full price, but this is 60 US over here. So I kind of hope, I was hoping that I think if they added one more chapter, they could have expanded on some of the plot points, which they either rushed or they just completely ignored until, oh, this just happened, by the way, let's move on type thing. So that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth because this is Majima's first game, and we got a taste for what a Majima game would be like in the Kiwami to the Majima side, whatever the missions which unlocked, the chapters which unlocked while you were doing Kiryu stuff. So I guess for his first game, I'm happy with a lot of stuff. Like I love the combat here. I'd say Lost Judgment and Pirate Yakuza and Hawaii are my favorite action combats in the series. But yeah, story wise, it's a little messy. So I like quite a bit about it, but not as happy as I wanted to be with it.
yeah,
So
it's an interesting.
that's my feeling.
I didn't think about like the price point, but like the man who erased his name was $50, and that was like you said on the shorter side. Like if you did just mainline, you could do it under 10 hours if you wanted to fully complete it. The progression in man who erased his name is weird because everything was tied to the Akame network in that. So it like even sub
Yeah.
stories. So you were very much tied to like raising this Akame network level, which is kind of a not the best system that they've added. Uh,
I think they copied Xenoblade Torna, the Golden County, because that had that stupid
yeah,
community level
community
nonsense,
level.
and I was like, why did you ruin a perfect expansion by this like random padding? But yeah, like it reminded me exactly of that when I played it.
I will say that since we're mentioning it, I played on Japanese VA for Pirate Yakuza. I always play Yakuza games in Japanese VA because that's what I'm used to. But I will give credit to the Japanese voice actress who did Akame in The Man Who Erased His Name. She's the same one who does Noah in this game.
Yep,
So her
yep,
Summer Uika. And she
yep.
sounds totally different as Noah compared to her role as Akame. Like it's unbelievable that those had the same voice actress for those characters. Like that's crazy, very crazy vocal range, crazy talent. So shout outs to her on that. Um, but in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, like I'd say like if you want to mainline the story only, which it's fine. It's still on the shorter side. It's like maybe about 13 to 15 hours. It is strange though because I won't say how many chapters this game is, but like the way that they paced out chapters in it is very strange because you'll have like the intro being chapter one, and then a lot like chapter two is basically introducing you to the rest of the game. There's like here's the naval combat, here's the like most of the locations that this game will have, and like it establishes a lot of things about the story and the plot, along with introducing you to all the side stuff you can do. So chapter 2 is like massive in this game relatively to all the other chapters, and then after every story chapter after that is like relatively like normal sized. But like it's just like chapter 2 is like really threw me off, and it's like, man, this is taking way too long. What the hell? So it really made me wonder like what was the scope of the game. So you're still getting a 13 to 15 hour mainline story in this, which is fine. But I think what really helps this game compared to The Man Who Erased His Name is like the side stuff is way more interesting and engaging in Pirate and Yakuza compared to the Akame Network stuff in Man Who Erased His Name because there is a novelty in this pirate premise. So for better or for worse, this is probably going to be like the first and last time they'll have pirates in this series. So this game does a lot of jack of all trades in that department where they'll bring up a lot of like typical pirate tropes and bits and all that stuff, like nodding to like the general culture of pirates um in modern culture, and with a Yakuza twist. So it tries to like cover a lot of stuff, but there's not really a lot of like depth to it. It's nice that it's there, but it's like there's some things that like you want it to be deeper, but it really isn't. Like for example, um, the way that naval exploration is introduced to you and how it's laid out, it's not an open world game. It's um, there are landmark locations like Hawaii, Atlantis, Rich Island. There are sea maps to them, so like you go to like the pirate map and say, hey, I want to travel the seas around Hawaii or the seas around Atlantis. So they have like their own like map zone of like body of water leading up to those landmarks, and then you use your naval ship, your pirate ship, like at one of like the lighthouse fast travel locations, and you start traveling there along that zone map towards that landmark, and then you can open up other lighthouses along the way to serve as fast travel marks to either fast travel to one of those lighthouses in that zone or to another zone, like another sea map. Um, so once you unlock those stuff, eventually they'll introduce you to um, these islands, the optional islands that you can go to, and they'll have like treasures. So a lot of like this game, if you're like a collectionist for these games, there's like a whole treasure index that you can engage. Like that's how you engage in every part of the game, pretty much, because like a lot of the game has unique treasure that reward you with money and reputation points, which you then use to upgrade abilities for Majima, along with like recruiting other pirate crewmates for your crew. Um, so one way to get these treasures is these optional islands that you can travel to, and then uh, you can travel with up to 4 other NPC members, and they have like classes, like one's attacker, one's defense, one's a healer, and one's a range shooter. And then they'll have obviously their strengths and weaknesses. Like the range shooter has like low defensive abilities, so you'll need like a defense dude to kind of like taunt enemies. You have an attacker that's like generic DPS, and healer obviously um, um, occasionally heals you and your party members throughout the party. But it's very much like it's very surface level. There's nothing really deep to your party members do level up, but like you don't really you don't affect anything on it. Like they level up as long as you complete it, and the other stats will level automatically. You can't really direct them to do anything. They just kind of act on their own, um, and so forth. And then just uh, like rarities to or not tiers to your party members, where like bronze tiers like they can only level up to 30, silver ones can level up to 40, and then gold ones can level up to 50, and so forth. So like there's like a lot of systems there that like they could have got it could have been like it's more depth to it, but since they're trying to the scope of it is so wide enough already, like a lot of it is very surface level as a result. And then and then if you're just mainlining it, you're not really getting the most out of like this C map exploration. Like the most of this stuff is locked behind like an optional side story you can do where you unlock the other like dark instruments for the new pirate style, the Sea Dog style for Majima. where you can like use these instruments to summon animals in battle as like a super move and stuff like that, which is
So yeah,
ridiculous. But yeah, go
the
for it.
other thing is how every mini game, like you mentioned, right? They have a separate treasure, like, and it got you to like learn shogi, right, or get back to it.
Well, yeah, I never learned shogi, so I didn't get back to shogi. I didn't know
Okay.
in the first place, so I never touched shogi in these games. But the shogi mini game has a exclusive shop like the Dragon Cart shop or the Crazy Delivery shop. These have stuff in them, but they have currency that you can only earn by engaging with that particular mini game. So in shogi, there's treasure chest, there's some crewmates, there's some soundtrack music that you can buy for your MP3 player, and it's like, okay, well, like, what am I gonna do? So I actually asked my friends, like, do you know of a site that like tells you like the best shogi move? Because like shogi is like it's much like chess, definitely a lot like chess. It's like, but it can be solved, pretty much. So there's a site out there in Japanese that basically tells you your next best move. So you move the pieces according to how the NPC and you are moving, and then it'll tell you what your next best move is against what they did. But it requires you to at least learn the very basics of shogi in terms of like how each piece moves. So the in-game tutorial of the the Yakuza games will tell you like what each piece is and how they move. So it's all a matter of like learning like the kana, the character on those pieces, and like and translating them to like how the site shows that character, and then kind of going from there of like, okay, you input that's how the NPC moved, so you input it to this site, and then it'll think about it. It's like your next best move is that. So I wouldn't say learn how to play shogi, but I semi learned by kind of knowing how each piece moves, so I can input it to a third party site to tell me what my next best move is to get my points and get that treasure and my crewmates. God damn it! Um, it was an experience, I guess. That's for a lot of like the mini games in this game where like they either have stuff in their exclusive mini game shops like treasure and crewmates and soundtrack bits and costumes especially, or clothing for Majima because it has the man who erased his name clothing customization back in this but expanded. Um, so a lot of those shops offer those, so you engage at least a little bit in each of the minigame to like a decent amount. So like Crazy Delivery is like, if you want to get a lot of points in Crazy Delivery to empty out that shop, you have to get really good at Crazy Delivery because you get the most points out of it in a fast time by going to like the hardest difficulty level in that and then optimizing your route for it, playing it like 2 or 3 times. Dragon Cart the same way, where Dragon Cart was first introduced in Yakuza Like a Dragon. Now back here, expanded in some ways. But if you want to get a lot of points for it and also complete the sub stories tied to it, obviously you have to play a lot of it, pretty much like the whole thing. But then there are some mini games, like say if you just there are some NPCs on the map that can be your crewmates, and the map will tell you, it will give an icon saying this person can be your crewmate, but they have usually a requirement to them. So one of them is like, hey, score this amount in darts, and this character will join you, or reach this reputation level for this character to join you. But some of them have like really unique requirements, like, hey, if you want this NPC to join you, go play the pool minigame and beat normal difficulty in the one shot challenge. And the one shot challenge gets pretty tricky because it's one of those puzzle pool games where it'll be laid out to you in a certain way, and you have one shot to hit the cue ball to into another ball for them to go into the hole. But then there's like a lot of obstacles on the pool table to get there, and you only have so many tries until you have to do the whole thing again. So this is definitely one of the games in the entire series, like definitely one of the biggest games that like really, really, really has tantalizing, alluring methods to get you to play those mini games because If you want to if you're a completionist for you want to get every crewmate, for your pirate crew, you have to engage with that. And if you want to get every treasure, you have to engage with all of that, especially because there's gigantic treasure chests by a good chunk of these NPCs, and for my brain at least, I'm like, oh god, I really want to open that treasure chest really bad, and that requires me playing this mini game and buying that treasure from the shop, to open that treasure chest by them. So that's it's devious but a lot of fun, and good. Um,
And I think for the man who erased his name, most of the side content, not all, but most of the side content in that game is tied to the Akame network.
yeah,
So if you don't latch on to that, it's kind of easy to ignore.
right.
Where it seems like here it's a little bit more integrated in the theme of the game, the pirate ship, the crew.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's a little bit more integrated in that way where yeah, you can still mainline it and beat the game in 13 hours like you said, but almost like ignoring the premise of the game in the first place.
Yeah.
I think
No judgment
one more
rendered,
interesting
just trying to explain it. Go
Mhm.
ahead,
Yeah.
Mikhail.
One more interesting thing is, I think in this situation, both Josh and I scored like a Dragon Infinite Wealth the same, which is like a perfect score, even though like a perfect score doesn't mean the game is perfect, etc. But I think that just being in Honolulu on the same map, like not the whole map, but just being in the same world again in after some time has passed was just so much fun. I just love being in it, and I hope they expand on this for whenever the next game comes out, which is 9, I guess. But yeah, I just adore this map. It's still a lot of fun to explore, still a lot of fun to just beat people up in. And yeah, I really like how they integrated the mini games because in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, I think they had specific items or specific equipment for each character was in some of these mini games because I remember doing blackjack before getting to Hawaii in Infinite Wealth to get a good powerful bat for Ichiban. So over here it's different because they have the treasure system and they also have I think we haven't spoken about it yet, the ring system which Majima can equip different rings on different fingers of his hand, and that's basically the equipment system in this game. So
Yeah.
they I think they punched way above their weight for what budget and scope they had with this game, and it kind of paid off in some ways, but it also didn't work out in others. That's kind of
Yeah.
my takeaway from it.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the Honolulu locale, since it takes place after Infinite Wealth, there's a good chunk of sub stories that are like epilogues to the ones that when they were first introduced in Infinite Wealth. So you'll see some familiar faces in those sub stories if you played Infinite, engage with its sub stories. But that's it's other Yakuza games, they do that a lot as well. Um, but there was definitely one you didn't see this one the whole way through, Mikhail, I don't think. There's this one sub story chain in this game that it really threw me off guard, and I sort of alluded to it in my review, but I really want people to see it for themselves, and I don't want to give it away. But it's just one of those it's one of the strangest sub story finales that the series has ever gotten, and I'm like, it ends in a live action FMV. I'll give it that. It's a lot of FMV footage. I won't say who's involved and how that
I
goes
know what you're
down.
talking about. I know
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
yeah.
I didn't see that specific chain through, but I started it because I wanted to. When I found out one specific NPC in this game in a sub story, I was looking for that specific NPC. Let's leave it at that. And then I kind of figured out what you meant when you said how that chain. But yeah, I didn't end up doing it all the way because didn't get time. I will
Yeah.
eventually see it, but I know what you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. So it's definitely worth doing it and seeing for yourself and showing man, this is kind of weird and kind of. In some ways, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. In other ways, it's man, I don't really know if this is this is it's very weird. I don't know. So, and like you mentioned, Mikhail, and I wanted to circle it back around to this, with I also criticize this game for having a messy main narrative, and a lot of what got me to that 7 out of 10 score. It's not primarily the main reason, but it's definitely a big contributing factor. Is that this game, it's Majima's first solo game as the only protagonist. Like in Yakuza 0, he was this shared that protagonist role with Kiryu. Then like you mentioned with Yakuza 2 Kiwami, he had this Majima Saga side story that was very much a very secondary, smaller part of the core game, which is understandable. and so forth. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, a lot of time has passed. Having Majima being in that protagonist spotlight and now in his own game, like he's old as fuck. Like they even mentioned, like he's like 60 in this. Fuck. Um, so it's just like, what are you gonna do with this character? Because he's been through a lot already, and it's very very up there in years. And I like the whole premise of him being an amnesiac is it's a very tricky border to or pretty tricky rope to balance on when you're trying to tell a compelling narrative with a long-standing character in a long-running series, because the main reason Majima becomes a pirate, and this is established in the first chapter, is like he wants to show his thanks to Noah for saving him on that beach. And Noah, his main dream is like exploring the world beyond the island that he grew up on, because his father's very overprotective, because his dad has had some past scars of like being of some bad stuff that happened when he was like in his younger years off the island. And it's like he wants to make sure that if Noah eventually gets to the point, when he grows up, he wants to be at least ready to get off that island. But like he's being too overprotective about it, and Majima's like, you know what, I'll help you get off this island and explore the world. Like, you want to do it now, let's do it now. You know. Um. So there are going to be characters that you meet along the way that is tied to Majima's past and to events that happened before Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. There'll be familiar faces for people who've stuck with the series, but Majima doesn't have any memory of who they are. So I even mentioned in my review, like when a lot of the interactions between Majima and these past familiar faces with characters that he shares a history with, you know, those characters will explain who they were to Majima to hopefully you know, kickstart his memory. But Majima will be just like, nope, I don't remember you, and then the story continues to move along and stuff, and it's presented in a way that like it's trying to like kind of like at least pamper the players a little, of like saying it's okay if this is your first Like a Dragon game. We're gonna remind you or fill you in on who these characters were to Majima, and it's like, but it doesn't really serve much to the plot in general. Of like, because Majima will say, I don't remember you, and the plot continues to go on, and so it's just like one of these things that's like, I feel like it does a disservice to Majima's journey up until that point, because you don't really get a great um you know, sense of like bond or relationship of these characters who were with Majima through thick and thin, throughout the years and stuff like that, until like a certain point in the story where Majima will inevitably get his memory back, and I won't say when, but it doesn't. But it's already kind of like way too late up until that point. There's nothing to be done there. There's nothing that's done with it, uh, at all, really. So it's just like kind of like, okay, you didn't know how to do anything for this character, really. So this sort of gives off the vibe in this game that this is more of Noah's game and Noah's personal story, and really Noah's family, that like especially Jason and Noah, their bond and their past, and like what their aspirations are. So Majima, even though this is Majima's game as the sole protagonist, he still plays like a secondary, second fiddle role narratively, because Majima is more like a vessel to tell those character stories, rather than like having Majima have a personal story as well. And Majima doesn't really have much there. There is like small bits of it like overall world-wise there, but it's definitely not the main focus at all, and it's more like kind of like an afterthought once everything is said and done. And like Mikhail said, like the final chapter of this game really feels like they really had greater ambitions or aspirations for this game, and something just kind of fell apart, whether it's scheduling or just like overall scope, and that was never the point. But you just feel like there are time and time again throughout the final chapter, you're just like, man, there's a lot of lost potential in this game, because like there are these characters that like try to have their moments, and these characters didn't have like hardly any build up to like earn any of these payoffs in this finale. So you just kind of feel nothing for these characters, because they've been they barely had any screen time up until that point, to even make it feel like a payoff at all. So it's like the overall like pacing of the narrative and where the narrative decides to what the narrative decides to prioritize is just really really strange. Like I kind of wish they focused a lot more, expanded more on like Noah's family, because there are some cool things that happen within Noah's family in that game, but it's so underexplored, and it's like, fuck, man, like it's so, man, I don't know, it's just a really strange game and how it's laid out. You know what I mean, Mikhail?
Yeah, and uh, like obviously not gonna spoil the ending, but I want to just touch on one specific thing. When you finish the game and you're watching what happens and what follows, it felt like like I said before that some parts were really rushed, but I absolutely adore the finale, the final scene. But all I'll say about that is it reminded me of how a Boston Legal episode ends if you watch that show. So
Like,
I
go
absolutely
ahead,
love that.
that's an interesting
Yeah, so I
comparison
love that.
though.
But it did show me that I mean it did I think the people who wrote this game kind of wanted Majima to have some Ichiban in himself because how he just decided to throw everything away and like do everything for Noah. It kind of reminded me of how Ichiban lives his life and how we've experienced him in two games now. So at least when I saw when we see this thing through, I just thought, okay, kind of feels like he has some Ichiban in him for how he wanted to do everything for like Noah and his family. And he just said, forget my old life. I can't remember anything. I'm just going to do this now and I'll become a pirate. So there is I'd say like there's some disjointed aspects in how they handle it, but I kind of see what they were going for, but again, it just keeps reminding me that I wish they'd just given this one more chapter, or like just make it a $70 game and like go all the way. You don't need to do this half-assed stuff in some aspects of it.
Mhm.
That's what I'm gonna just keep coming back to, I think.
But like to sum it up, like Mikhail said earlier, like this has really, really like some really great gameplay. A good healthy amount of like mini game selections that are varied and fun and gives you an incentive to put time into them. The combat is really fun because it's very flexible, like Lost Judgment, and it's very fast. Like his Mad Dog style has some of like the fastest animations in the series. You can attack stupid fast with your knife during certain chains. The pirate sea dog style that they introduced in this one is really cool because you have a lot of like toys to play with, like a dual cutlasses being your primary weapon that you can throw out like boomerangs. You get a pistol, you get a chain hook. At a certain point, like you become overpowered in this game really fast, even the hardest difficulty. It's very easy to kind of cheese things if you like once you embrace that things are better for you if you treat this less as a combo game and more as a hit and run game, because you can do still like big bursts of damage doing hit and run tactics in this game very fast. You kind of break the game apart because the AI doesn't know what to do against that sort of play style. There are a lot of like enemies that have firearms in this game to the point that like for the kind of like the first time in the series they give you a visual and sound indicator for shots that are about to be fired at you. So, like when an enemy is about to fire something at Majima, you get like a red like visual indicator up above Majima's head, along with like a big beep, like going beep, and then you have to like press the dodge button. Um, because and they did that because I imagine because like there's so many just like ranged attackers for you, so like it's one of those things like it's like it doesn't really distract me that much. Or it's kind of like a easy way to kind of just avoid damage in a game that's already easy to avoid damage. So I'm like, okay, sure. So like the combat is fun, but it also breaks apart. Um, there are like the naval combat is okay. There are times where you board the ship in this game. So like if it's like a boss encounter, like you take down the enemy ship HP, and then you have the option to like, well, you have to board the ship, so it gives you the option to board it. You board it with up to 20 NPCs. So you have like this like quick brawl on the enemy ship before you complete the battle. You have like you know uh, Pirate Coliseum stuff where there's Coliseum battles that gives you the naval combat, the boarding ship, and yeah, it's just it's a solid entry in the series. It's not necessarily my favorite of anything, but it's okay. Like, it makes a weird premise work. It's great in some spots. It's really fun to play, but I think it has just like weird nooks and crannies that, like, where it stumbles pretty hard. But if you're just here looking for a good time, it'll give you that too, and you'll be mostly like it. It's kind of weird. Like, I just don't know where they're gonna take the series next. It's definitely gonna be not gonna be the last of the Like a Dragon series, obviously. But it's just like, but it really reminds you that, like, a lot of these characters are fucking old, man. What are they gonna do next? Like, even Ichiban is old as
Yeah,
fuck.
I was gonna say, like, even with the, handing off the reins to Ichiban, which has been a drawn out a few years, of course, because of 8 kind of having both protagonists in the spotlight. Ichiban also had, like, his time in the slammer and was in his mid-40s in his first game. Like, he's not a young
Yeah.
gun.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, I'll take my long running series that, like, prominently features old dudes, ancient dudes. Like, that's awesome. But, like, it's just like, I don't know where you how much more you got in you for this series. Like, I'm not saying to end it, but I'm just saying, where do you take it? Because it feels so long running, and it feels like the main crux of the conflict, which was the Yakuza, has come and gone. Like, I don't know where you take it next. You can only, you know, take this
Only
concept
spin
for
off
so
so
long.
many stories
Yeah,
about, like, ex Yakuza or people being disgruntled because of the collapse of, um,
exact. The Great
the
Dissolution.
house. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah, they have a lot of challenges up ahead of them. You also have this new Project Century thing from RGG Studio. They're also working on that new Virtua Fighter. There's like, I forgot, there's like 2 or 3 other projects that they're doing that I've already forgotten because they're working on so much. Um,
I think we need a new Judgment game in Hawaii because they're definitely going to reuse this map a few more times.
and that's a good question too. Like, what are they gonna do with Judgment? Because after Kaito
Yeah.
files, they have I think his name is Takuya Kimura, and his whole legal holdups of, like, can you make a mainline Judgment game without Kimura, without that main character, like, very iconic main character now in that series? It's like, I would love a new Judgment game. I don't know if I would like Kaito to be the sole main character in that game. Though I like Kaito as a character, but I also really, really just like Kimura's character in that game, in that series too. So I don't know. I don't know if there's what they'll do with Judgment, or just call it good as well. Because I'm totally fine with just never. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'll be honest. I'm totally fine with no new Judgment game ever again, if that means they have to, like, kind of take out everything that made Judgment, like, really awesome. Like, it's good to end off on a high note. Lost Judgment, very great high note. Kaito Files,
Yep.
kind of overpriced, but decent epilogue to Kaito's story arc as well. So if there was never a new
It's
Judgment game ever again, I'd be okay with it.
it's kinda like the whole capitalist thing where it's like, allow IPs to end sort
Uh
of
huh.
thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not saying every existing IP needs to shut its doors, but, uh, for a series that's been going along as long as it has and has that many entries, I mean, you can tell similar stories in a similar setting, it just doesn't need to be directly tied or even
Yeah.
indirectly tied.
Mhm. So,
Oh, I think before we move on from this, there's one thing I want to bring up which I found really funny. Like, what is up with the musical numbers in this game? Like, there were like 3 of them.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. I kind of
Yeah,
there's definitely some points in this game where it just turns into a musical. And, it's
and
fun.
they
It's
got
fun.
full English. They got full English. They had an English dub for that also. Pretty cool. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
I was pretty thrown off by one of the later ones at least because yeah, when I was listening to the soundtrack and that song came on, it just reminded me like it's like one of those I'd say those the things where people rip the models out of the game and they make those anime music videos. It was like one of those scenes. But yeah, it was funny.
yeah. Now, was there anything else you want to talk about with Pirate Yakuza, Mikhail?
I think we got everything. And obviously people can read your review. They can read my Steam Deck thing, and we
Yeah,
have some guides also up.
yeah. Yeah, but that's about it for Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. It's cool. I mean, it's good to see that people are enjoying it now that they've had a chance to play it. Hopefully, Sega and RGG Studio patches up those crashes because they're not fun.
Yeah, I was just about to shout out, of course, you wrote up a lengthy, thorough review up on the site at rpgsite.net. And then Mikhail wrote his Steam Deck ROG Ally kind of companion piece impressions of the game. We have, of course, a couple updates. What's in the day one patch up on the site, and you're starting to get some guides posted, like the photo rally. I remember doing that for Infinite Wealth, and I know that was a lot of work. And I saw that you already had a guide on that, so I know you worked really hard on that because that's a lot of screen caps and managing files and organizing, and it's a
Yeah,
lot of work. So.
always a fun thing. And then
Yeah.
of course, people who the school is back, the test questions are back. So
The vocational school, yep.
yeah.
That's always a lot of work as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's kind of a suite of features and news articles up on the site for Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, a game that I'm planning to get to because I just finished up, Daybreak 2 this week, and that's probably gonna be my next week game. Probably not gonna mainline it, but I'll see how much I get. I'll see how much I guess temperament I have for how much I want to do on side stuff,
Yeah.
shogi and pirate stuff.
I recommend people not to go insano like I did. I just it was a personal challenge of mine, and I don't know, man. I learned shogi for this. What the fuck?
The next game we're going to talk about is a preview opportunity that we had. So another feature that is a companion to that on the site is for Xenoblade Chronicles X or Cross.
Before we get to
Uh,
this, I just wanted to say thanks to Mikhail for joining us on that portion. I know he had to leave after the Pirate Yakuza
right? Yeah,
portion.
it's across the middle of the night for him. So
Yeah. So
obviously
thank you, Mikhail.
messing up his sleep schedule to record with us live. Middle of the day for us, middle of the night for him. So thank you so much, Mikhail.
Mhm.
So for Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition, of course, that is a major release for next month in March. If you follow RPG news at all, you've seen that a lot of previews went up this week. And the way that Adam and Cullen, both contributing to RPG site, framed their preview is here's what's new in Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition so far. Obviously, I'll let Adam speak to it. I'll just try to tee him up a little bit. Of course, this is kind of in that weird preview space where we're not at release embargo, so there's certain things they are allowed to talk about and share, and there's certain things that they cannot, but they can kind of say there is more that is different or changed. And some of that you can glean from the trailers for new content, new story, things like that. And then, of course, this is written kind of to be useful to those that are returning to the game and those that are new to the game. In terms of, you may have not played this, but this is how this works differently than the original release on Wii U. So, but I have not played Xenoblade Cross. I think I'm one of the few people in this chat room that hasn't. So I'm going to hand the microphone off over to Adam to speak on his and Cullen's behalf about just doesn't need to be too thorough. You can kind of touch the high points about Xenoblade Chronicles Cross, your preview, and what the main differences are as we look forward to the release next month.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too in depth in this because we're going to talk about this, once the game for the review period, when the game is about to launch, right? So I don't want to have to repeat myself then.
Yeah.
But yeah, the preview embargo lifted. Now, the preview limitation is I cannot talk about anything beyond Chapter 4, which, if you played the game, Chapter 4 is not that far into it. But however, Chapter 4, once you get to that point, you can pretty much explore the whole world from the get-go. So, on one hand, it's not very far into the game, but on the other hand, you can do a lot before Chapter 5. You can explore the whole world if you want. It's that sort of open world game. But yeah, for the preview, I have played this game before, and I basically just wanted to kind of highlight the differences. What's new, what's different. And, for like you said, for people who played it, they'll be like, oh, I can see, this change is big or this change is significant. Other people just not even people who are new to the game, not knowing for sure how is it different? Maybe it provides some context, like here's how it is now in the Switch version compared to how it was in the Wii U version. So I guess maybe I'll just go through these in order. One of the bigger changes is that you do not have to, you can change your party out from a menu. Now, if you played any of the other like numbered Xenoblade games, they have a more traditional like party, right? 6, 7 characters that you can that join your party and that you can kind of swap in and out. I know Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has like the blades, right? And Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has the that 7th member. So they're like not really party members, but they sort of are. But this game has around 20 party members. The main 2 characters are Lyn and Elma. They are basically the main 2 characters of the game. Your character is more like an avatar. He doesn't speak. He has like lines that you can choose, but he doesn't have like he has like a battle voice, but he doesn't like talk in scenes or whatnot. He's like an avatar. Lyn and Elma are the main characters, but then there's like around 20 other characters that you can recruit over the course of the game. In the original version, in order for you to swap them into your party, you'd have to go around New LA, which is kind of like this hub city of this game, and find them, talk to them, and add them to your party. And you'd have to do this every time you wanted to add them to your party. And also, the game wasn't, they weren't highlighted on the map in like a very obvious way. You kind of just had to find them and then remember, Murderous, who's one of the characters, likes to sit out over here in the hangar or whatever, or Doug's in the hangar, and Fogg's over by the residential district, and Hope is by the cathedral, and you just kind of had to remember where they were and to add them to your party. Now there's a menu that you can just swap in and out characters whenever you want, and you can even do this out when you're like way away from the city. Just out in the field, you can just swap in and out characters. It's obviously more convenient. Also, it's kind of a tease. You can see how many character slots there are in that menu, even from the get-go. And I posted a screenshot of that in the preview. And I knew people would do this, because of course they would. And, I'm allowed to. People were like, oh, I see that there are 22 character slots. How many were there in the original? That means there are such and such. How many new characters are there? The answer is 4. I can't say any more than that. But there are 4 new characters. And people I've seen people speculating, oh, it must be that character in the trailer. Maybe this other character is playable now. Who knows? Or what's rumored?
It's Mario and Luigi.
Yeah, of course. I actually have seen some people say, oh, I actually kind of liked having to find the character on the map and talk to them to have them join my party. It was charming. And I do get that a little bit. It is a little bit charming to like realize, oh, this character hangs out by the cathedral and they're talking to this other character usually.
Generally, you're kind of pushed to know their routines almost.
Yeah, like one of the characters is Alexa, who is basically a Skell fanatic. So they hang out in the Skell hangar and they're talking to one of the other characters, part of their quest lines, like at all times. So that's kind of just where they hung out. And you can still do that. You can still go and talk to them and have them join your party that way. You just don't have to. And I just think in this case, yes, I do agree that it was sort of charming. You have to find them and talk to them. But I think just convenience won out, where it's just like, all right, open a menu, swap them in and out.
Yeah, I agree. That's like, it's one of those. It's like it's I get it. I know where they're coming from, but dude, it's just like just a chore every time. The by and large, 98% of the people who played are like, what's your favorite part of this game? No one's gonna say I love the way you change party members in this game, unlike most other games, You
can also change time whenever, which is kind of feels like a small addition, but also like other Xenoblade games allow you to do this, where you can just kind of change it from morning to night. In the original version, you could do that, but you can only do it at certain spots on the map. Here, you can do it whenever.
I forgot. Isn't this a game where like only certain NPCs show up during certain days?
Yes.
Or certain times of the day.
It's not as bad as I remember the original Xenoblade. Even the definitive edition, there are certain characters that like have quests at certain times, and you have to like. I remember in the original Xenoblade, like you're in Colony 9 or 7 or whatever colony it is, and like, or pretty much any of those places in the original Xenoblade, you're like, all right, let me change the time like noon check see if there's any quests. 3 o'clock, check if there's any quests. 6 o'clock, check if there's any quests. You'd have to like just check random times because they would show
It's
up
all
very
had like limited
sporadically.
time slot, like that 2 to 3 hour window
Right.
too. It's annoying. Yeah.
This game doesn't have anything like that. I think almost all the quest NPCs are there all the time, so you don't need to worry about it. But, you know, there are some characters that move around at certain times and certain spawns at certain times and whatnot. So it's kind of a minorly useful thing that you can kind of change it whenever versus just at like a bench, which is where you had to go. One of the other bigger changes, it almost took me a while to like realize this is different. Not because it actually is pretty obvious, but I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Like, what am I missing here? I feel like there's something that's just been removed, and it turns out there is, and that is blade levels. I actually have to go into a little bit of detail on this on my preview because it's a little bit more mechanical and like systems based. But in the original Xenoblade, you have your character level, or Xenoblade Cross, I mean. You have your character level, which is pretty much a standard level. You have your class level. In this game, you can choose when you're starting out between like 3 different classes, and then those like branch out into like 2 more each, and then they have like advanced versions. So there's a class system in this game. So you have your character level, you have your class level, and then you had a blade level in the original game, and this was sort of like a level that went up like a meter. Like there was a little meter on the UI when you like completed missions, when you defeated enemies, and also you picked a division there's 8 divisions in the game. It's sort of like what your role is, and certain divisions had certain bonuses. Like there's like the Pathfinders, which like by exploring the map and by getting those little frontier nav nodes, which I'll get to that in a second, you could upgrade. You could get points that way towards your blade level, and blade level affected 2 things primarily. One, what basic missions were available to you. These are just sort of like these kind of really minor fetch questy type quests you can do. So you could get more and more of those as you increase your blade level. But more significantly, it affected what treasures you could pick up. So field skills. I don't think these were in the original Xenoblade, but if you played Xenoblade 2 and 3, but mostly in 2, there are things you could do on the map that required a field skill. Xenoblade Chronicles Cross is like a simplified version of that. There's treasure all over the map. They're on your mini map. It's like a little yellow square. In the original version, like you would go to like a square and it would say, "Oh, this is a biological level 2 treasure." That means your biologic field skill has to be at level 2, or else you can't pick this up. So you'd have to upgrade it. And then there was like archaeological, I can't say the word, level 3 or 4, and you would have to have leveled up your field skills in order to pick up these items. And then there's mechanical as well. There's 3 different skills. Those are all gone. They're not there anymore. Blade levels are gone. Field skills are gone. They're all gone. Almost. There are still a couple of locked containers on the map, but not many. And they're kind of like special containers that require like a quest to get a key to unlock. But otherwise, basically what this means is, like, practically is, at the very start of the game, you can just go explore Mira and pick up practically like 95% of the treasures, besides the few locked ones. You don't have to level up anything. You can just pick them up. No blade levels, no division points, no field skills. It's just all gone. Which, I feel like it's just for convenience. It's like one less treadmill that we'll have to worry about. I don't think it, like, dramatically... It's hard for me to say that this is a big good change or a bad change. It's just simplified.
It's definitely a streamlining change, and there's definitely ways where streamlining can take too many edges off.
Mm-hmm.
Having not played Xenoblade Cross, I do know a lot of people were frustrated with the field skills in Xenoblade 2.
They were never as bad as the 2, where you had to have a certain like blades with certain abilities and leveled up.
Yeah, because
affinity charts.
In 2, the main thing was, if I remember right, even if you had a blade with that level, you needed to have them on you, like, slotted. So you'd have to like continuously juggle who was with you. And yeah.
And you had to raise affinity charts. Remember the affinity charts? That's actually probably like my least favorite part about Xenoblade 2. So
I especially some affinities, like, you have this character not be in your party to level this affinity up. It's like, wow, amazing. Cool affinity.
What was Ursula's? What was the thing with Ursula? I remember her affinity chart had something notorious.
You had to send her out on like dispatch
Mercenary
missions. I forget what it
quest.
is.
a billion of
That's
those.
you would pick blades where they would come back after like I don't remember for a period of time or whatever. And hers was basically you can never equip this blade if you want to level it up because you have to send it out without. Oh, anyways, hold on, go on. I see my
Well, when they
Um,
remaster Xenoblade 2, inevitably they'll adjust this. So
But yeah, so
Yeah.
Xenoblade X not having blade levels and like obviously I get the party member stuff, and like I understand like you said having no blade levels, but it does like take away a little bit of like the simulation part of it where you feel like you're part of this like kind of almost planetary expedition entity in there. Like obviously you're gonna get to this next thing like of like just having not the Wii U gamepad anymore and having to navigate the map using one screen instead of like having the tablet. So like there are parts like Xenoblade X that are like inherently cool because it was part of the Wii U and the way they or utilized that control scheme and presentation, but also like stuff with like no blade levels and the way it handled it. It's like I'm like 50-50 on it, I guess. Like because there is something cool about like having to build yourself up in this game to feel like you had access to all of it, but you had to work your way towards it. And maybe for a lot of people, the journey isn't the fun part. And for me, it's just like I kind of saw it as a more of a simulation perspective of like, okay, if I want to open these chests, I have to like get more reputation, build myself up, make my character like kind of prove themselves almost by progressing through the ranks.
yeah, it is a progression system like in the game that's just no longer there. Like
Yeah.
again, I don't want to say this is a bad thing, but it's not like
Yeah.
a slam dunk good thing either. It's just like, oh, I guess that's different. So
Mhm.
it's just different.
Nuance in my video game
Yeah.
sessions.
Crazy.
Now, I don't see anyone talking about this because they probably don't understand the implications of it yet. But another big change to the game is something called quick cooldown. So if you played the original Xenoblade and not Cross obviously being really the second Xenoblade game, came out, after Xenoblade 1, before Xenoblade 2. It has its battle system is most similar to 1. It's not exactly the same, obviously, but it's most similar to 1, where you have 8 skills or arts on like your art bar, kind of like your palette, I think is what it's called, an art palette. And then you basically can pick your arts, and then they have like a little circle icon. It cools down. It's like a clock. It eventually rotates around and basically cools down so you can use it again. And that's just kind of how the balance of the game works, is that you kind of rotate through your skills as they cool down, and some of them have longer cooldowns than others. There's certain abilities where it's like, okay, this ability gives you an aura, and if you have an aura, this other ability will have a bonus, or if you're attacking from the front or the side, that's actually the same as Xenoblade 1. So that was all there. But what they added in the definitive edition is a quick cooldown. Basically what it is, it's a new meter. And the new meter is basically there, and it's like, if you want to just use an ability that's not cooled down yet, you can do that. You don't have to wait for it to cool down at the cost of this quick cooldown meter instead. So like, oh, I want to use this backslash attack again. It's cooling down, but I'm just going to press Y, the button Y, and use it again, and your quick cooldown meter gets used up a bit, but you can just use the ability again. And then you can do it again. Like, you can basically just use your quick cooldown in place of the actual cooldown. And that means you can kind of spam abilities, because in the original design of the combat, you cannot spam. That's just by design, right? It has to cool down. You have to rotate through abilities. Now you can spam abilities at the cost of quick cooldown. And a primary thing is quick cooldown replenishes after every battle. So you don't need to like save it necessarily, because it's just going to fill up to full once you're done. And most battles in these games, you're only fighting a couple enemies at a time. You're never like fighting usually more than 4 or 5. Maybe there's a few places in some of those bases where you are, but usually you're fighting like 1, 2, 3, 4 enemies, and that's it. So you can kind of use your quick cooldown, and then by the next battle, it's full, you can use it again. This has some pretty significant implications on the game balance, Now, Xenoblade Chronicles Cross was never really like a balanced game. It's very, very flexible in what you can do with the art system, with the equipment system, with the augment system, with how you can upgrade your material, your equipment, with the drops and the loot. You could create pretty broken builds in the original version already, which any system with this level of flexibility, that's kind of inevitable, where you're going to find some combination that's just going to be extremely, extremely good, and mow down anything that comes your way. In this game, I feel like that's even more so because of the quick cooldown, because now being able to basically spam certain abilities in a certain way, basically, I'll put it this way. I was like level 35, and I was able to take down enemies who were like level 50 with relative ease. And the way that EXP scaling works in a lot of these Xenoblade games, I'm gaining a ton of EXP. And so like I was practically always over leveled because I could easily level up by fighting enemies way higher level than me. So kind of balance of the game is, if you just kind of approach it in a certain way, you don't even have to be a genius to do this. You can kind of really just kind of blow right past it, which it is what it is. But if you're looking for like a well-balanced game, it wasn't really never that to begin with, but now even less so.
Yeah,
So this change seems like it's a little bit falls more on the slightly more on the actually kind of a bad change.
It's
in your mind.
When I'm replaying the game,
but
it kind of feels a little bit like maybe a weird comparison, like Final Fantasy VIII to me, where it's like, okay, Final Fantasy VIII is a game you can completely bust open easily if you know what you're doing. And it's kind of fun just to see how busted you can get, and that's kind of the approach I took here. Like, all right, how overpowered can I make my character? Like how far can I stretch this? What are my limits? What's the ceiling here? Aim for the sky. But it's definitely not a balance thing. So that's the approach.
It's an interesting. FF8 is an interesting comparison because and especially in the context of like what we were establishing before, we're like, in Xenoblade X, like, to bust open the battle system, you kind of have to learn it and like and build up to it. And like now, it's like, let's compare doing like a blind FF8 playthrough to like a blind Xenoblade X playthrough, where like you can eventually get to a good spot in those games and feel like you have some mastery over the system, but like you learned it, you earned it, sort of scenario. While like the quick cooldown in Xenoblade X is like, imagine if you had like a button in FF8 for just instantly refreshing your action meter, so you can immediately act again instead of like waiting for that AP bar, the ATB bar to fill up. You just press the button, you can act immediately again. Press that button again, act immediately again. If we're using the FF8 comparison, and now think about like when thinking about like actual mastery of these games, like not with beforehand knowledge, or like whether you saw a guide or like the game well enough to do this, like FF8, that stems on like doing a lot of triple triad to get Lionheart early for Squall, and doing a level 1 playthrough, or a low level playthrough on that. And then
everyone knows the proper way to play Final Fantasy VIII is to never level up. And I'm being serious. Don't ever level up.
It makes the game like 10 times harder to do.
And then when you do level up, when you get the GFs that have the stat bonuses to maximize your stat increases.
Yeah, Xenoblade X, like the equivalent of that is like, once you know the game well enough, you'll start knowing like, okay, how do I loop overdrive and get infinite overdrive in this game? And I think about that, I'm like, you could actually like just like how you can break FF8 wide open, you can break Xenoblade X wide open if you start like knowing early what's the good equipment to get that infinite overdrive build going to really break that game open. But you kind of had to like build up towards it in both cases, where you kind of need to know what you're doing and build up towards it. You're working, you're grinding towards those options. While the quick cooldown option now in this one is kind of like just almost skipping all of that, where like it doesn't validate those play styles and like previous ways of play, but it's like it feels to it really busts it open favorably in your favor very, very early on, in ways that like the game was not balanced around. And so it kind of like on a replay, it's totally fine. But for people who are playing this for the first time, which is a lot of people, it kind of almost, I guess, cheapens that experience, for lack of a better or less elegant term.
It's not like an I win button, but it definitely makes it easier. And let me just give like a specific example. So overdrive is a mechanic in this game that basically increases your battle capability in a multitude of ways. It costs 3,000 TP, which is a point system in the game, to use. And basically, I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but in the original game, what you would want to do, like eventually, like kind of build your way towards, was an infinite overdrive build. And there's a lot of these where you cast overdrive. It costs 3,000 TP. It only lasts 15 to 20 seconds. But like, can I build 3,000 TP again in that 15 to 20 seconds so that basically I can loop right back into another overdrive, and then again, and then again? It wasn't easy to do. You had to like construct your build to do that, to like be able to gain the TP fast enough to basically maintain your overdrive state. Because normally what happens is you use overdrive, it lasts 15 seconds, and you're like, okay, it's done. Now I got to build up my TP again. So it was, you use it in spurts, right? But now, again, a little bit into the weeds here. There's an ability called Tornado Slash for long swords that gains TP if you use it when you have an aura activated. So imagine in the original version, you would use an aura, which is like a buff, right? You would use Tornado Slash, and then you have to wait because it has to cool down.
Yep.
Right? And it takes 10 seconds, and like, oh, that's my overdrive's going to be finished in 20 seconds, right? But now you don't have to wait. So what I would do, this is just a simple version of this. There's other options. Is you could do an aura, and then you could do overdrive, cost 3,000 TP, and then you can do Tornado Slash, Tornado Slash, Tornado Slash, Tornado Slash, Tornado Slash. Oh, I'm back up to 3,000 TP. Overdrive, Tornado Slash, Tornado Slash, Tornado Slash. Now eventually you do run out of cooldown, the quick cooldown meter, but usually
by then the battle's over.
still,
Yeah,
the fact that yeah, the battle's over. So, and then it's full for the next battle. So it's like, okay, and maybe this is a little bit even more into the weeds. When you're doing overdrive, you can gain bonuses, and melee attack bonuses give you an EXP bonus. If I do Tornado Slash 12 times in a row, I think that's an 80% EXP bonus. So I could kill an enemy 15 levels higher than me or whatever, and gain an 80% EXP bonus on top of that.
Yeah.
You can basically like, oh, I gain a level per fight, or maybe even 2 levels. I think there is an EXP cap of 9,999, but still, like, I was able to hit that, and like, oh, okay, now I'm level. I think I went from like level 35 to like level 45 or 50 in like an hour or 90 minutes or whatever, very quick. So yeah, basically that's my point, is that I think people, when they play this game, especially veterans, will realize, oh, this quick cooldown, I don't want to say it like destroys the game, and I'm not trying to sound too negative, but it's I can't lie, it changes the complexion of balance pretty significantly, and like, of course it does. If you can just ignore the cooldown, like, of course it's going to change the balance. Like, there's no way around it. So that's what it is. And also, kind of tied to that, now I might need James or Josh to remind me, in the original game, when you're filling out the map for Sylvalum or Mira, like different regions of the map, there's a percentage for every region of the map. In this version of the game, when you get to like Primoria or Oblivia or Noctilum, these are the different regions, so like 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, you get a bonus. Like, oh, at 5% you get some money. At 10% you get some rewards tickets, which exist in the original game. At 15% you get an energy clip, which is new, and I'll get to that in a sec. But did the original version have these like rewards you got for meeting different percentage thresholds?
Don't remember because it's been so long since I played
Yeah,
it. I played it like 4.5 years ago, so.
Yeah, I don't think they were there. But anyway, so you gain more money now because you gain money for filling out Sylvalum, but also you get these energy clips. Energy clips are basically just a key item. They're not like a consumable or anything, but basically as you fill out the world map and you get higher percentage on the survey, is what they call it, you get these energy clips, which basically increase your quick cooldown meter, like maximum. So basically, the more of Mira you explore and the more energy clips you get, the more quick cooldown you have. So it kind of even becomes even more and more exploitable.
Yeah, because it's kind of interesting. Like you could theoretically. I wonder how much of the map you can like fully explore now before you even get a skill. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's some like
yeah.
flying areas you can't get to until you get the
Mhm.
flight skill.
But
But yeah, I think in chapter I can only talk about up to chapter 4, and I don't think I've said anything beyond chapter 4 technically. You get a flying skill. I'm not allowed to say that.
wow, but
Actually,
in
I
the
think I am
original
allowed
game you
to
get a
say
flying
that, but
skill. That's okay. You're just talking about the original game.
yeah, of course. But yeah. I mean, this is the sort of game it's always been where once you get past like the opening sections, it's basically like, hey, just pick a direction and go somewhere. You can go to Caldros, which is like the last region of the game, right away if you want. Sure, do it. Fight some enemies that are like level 50 when you're
Hell
level
yeah.
10. Yeah, and now you can pick up treasures because you don't have to worry
Yep.
about your field skills. Most of them. There are still a few locked treasures, like I said. Also a couple other small things. Well, I say small, but they're not that small. I'm positive affinity levels go up faster now. It's one of those things that's like hard for me to prove because it's not like it's said anywhere explicitly, and it's not something I can just point to on a screenshot and say here they're faster now. I can just over the course of playing the game, I'm positive my affinity levels did not go up this fast the first time I played this on Wii U. I'm pretty sure they changed that they go up faster. Affinity levels, just like other Xenoblades, are with your characters, and in this game, the higher their affinity level, the more missions you can do with that character. So it basically makes those easier to do. Where in the original version, you're like, okay, I want to do these missions with Hope or whatever. So you kind of have to like put her in a party, do some kind of the fetch quests with her and some kills and whatnot, just to kind of raise her affinity up more slowly. Those go up faster now. Also, in the original game, each character's EXP was individual. So there's 18 characters or whatever in the game. All their levels were individual. If they were not in your party, they would not gain EXP. It wasn't that big a deal to level them up somewhat sufficiently. Like, oh, okay, if Hope is level 10 and I'm level 40, I can fight some level 40 enemies and Hope is gonna be boosted significantly and catch up relatively fast. But regardless, in this version, all characters gain EXP no matter what. So they're roughly going to be around your level, no matter who you
You're
have in
also
your
not
party.
really paying attention to like what your party members are doing. It's kind of you're more paying attention to like what your player character is doing.
Yeah, this is actually the sort of game where if you want, you can kind of you can. This game is really flexible. All 18 party members, you can affect all of their skills, all of their equipment, all of their class abilities, their arts. You can change all of that, and you can level them up, and you can give them good equipment, but you almost don't have to touch any of it. You can kind of just have them do whatever they want, and you just build your character and just almost treat it like a one-player game or a one-character game, and you can almost be fine. Now, you can make things easier on yourself if you at least try to keep your other characters up to snuff a little bit. But since there are so many, I don't blame people for ignoring it. Like, I don't want to suit up 18 other characters. What I did personally is I basically suited up Elma and Lynn because they're required in a lot of the story stuff and they're the main characters, so might as well put some effort into them. But all the other characters kind of just ignore. But still, they gain EXP. Actually, what this was most useful for was skills. In the game, in order to pilot a skill, they have to be level 30.
I forgot about that.
If they want to pilot,
Yeah.
if they want to pilot a level 50 skill, they need to be level 50. So like there are some of the tyrant monsters in this game where you really do need a skill to beat them, and I don't want to get too much into the skills because that's technically beyond the preview. But talking about the original game and the implications of things, you have to get your characters up high enough to put them in skills. So that was actually like kind of a hurdle. It's like, okay, I want to use 4 skills. I need to make sure I have these characters high enough to use skills because they have to be. So, but now that's basically much less a concern. Once your character reaches level 50, all the other characters are going to be at least close to level 50, even if you never use them. There's a couple other changes too. I don't know if I want to get into that because it's like technically you could do this before chapter 5, but practically probably not. Just talking about the preview limitations, but yeah, there are obviously new characters. They're in the trailer. We talked about them when we talked about the trailers. There's new story. I can say that I don't think this was unexpected, or at least I didn't expect it. Or I didn't. I said that wrong. This isn't a surprise to me. The new story in this game is not accessed separately. It's not like Torna. It's not like Future Connected or Future Redeemed, where it's like a separate option in the menu. It's literally in the game, and I can't say where it is. I literally cannot say where it's at in the game. The new story, even if you've played the original and you've seen the trailer, you can kind of guess. But there's new story. It's actually baked into the game now.
Yeah.
It's just not a menu option, which I think a little different for Xenoblade, but I kind of expected that. So
that's good to know for people. Yeah.
It wouldn't really make sense. It wouldn't really make sense if it was a separate option, I think. But
very curious.
It's there.
Very curious.
Actually, I think actually for the let me check my review embargo. I don't think I can say much about the review embargo, but I think actually the new story is off limits there, technically. So I can't. I mean, they don't want people to spoil it, right? But I might be able to get more context. Like, okay, here's what you can expect, maybe broadly, vaguely.
Okay. And obviously, like just like I was mentioning earlier, because this is not on the Wii U, it's on the Switch. We don't have we don't have the cool Frontier Nav seamless navigation anymore. You have to manually open it up on a single screen because we live in a single screen era.
I got used to that, I guess. It's a single button press to check the map.
Yeah.
So, like, it is what it is. You know, I don't know what else there is to say. It's obviously there's no second screen to put it on anymore, so it has to be that way. So
they should have let you link it up through the Nintendo app and use your phone, like on like the good old days, like when everyone tried to do the second screen experience with the phone,
the Xbox Companion app.
Yeah, God. Where's that? Huh?
Anyway, I still really like this game. There are definitely changes that are kind of unignorable. It definitely is. So for people who have played Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3, and they're like, oh man, I finally get to play Cross because I never had a Wii U or I didn't care about it before. It definitely is a different structure style of Xenoblade. It's less story driven. There is a story. And it does have some of those highly energetic, dramatic, choreographed cutscene Xenoblade that you're used to, but not as much. It's really more of this open world, exploration, wanderlust kind of game. I actually think as far as open world games go, it's still one of my favorites in that it's just so varied and the areas you can go to, what you can do. It's the sort of game where even in the first zone of the game, there's level... I mean, all Xenoblades do this to some extent, but like there's level 50 enemies, level 60 enemies when you're level 10.
Immovable Gonzalez or whatever.
There actually is a simian in this game in an early zone. He's level 81, I think, where I think it's kind of where it helped perpetuate this kind of Xenoblade meme where you're low level, you're just trying to get your footing, and all of a sudden level 80 gigantic monkey just comes and smacks you, and you're like, oh, I'm dead. He's there. So he's there. But yeah, it's a sort of game where like you kind of figure out it feels like a really hostile world, and you kind of have to, like, starting out, be careful, like, okay, I can kind of safely make my way through over here, and hey, what's in this cave? Like, oh boy, there's level 40 bugs in this cave or whatnot. The way that the Frontier Nav system works in terms of like trying to clear off the segments kind of gives you a nice kind of checklist completionist, like, aha, okay, this section's done, on to the next one sort of feel. But it's definitely a different sort of structure and pace to the other Xenoblades. Yeah. So just kind of, I think, I'm actually having Colin review this game for us. I might contribute a little bit, but he was the sort of person when he played part of the original game, but not the whole thing. And he admits, and I think he will admit in his review, like, this wasn't really what I expected back then, which I think was true for a lot of people because people they loved Xenoblade 1 and they just wanted the next one. Xenoblade 2 wasn't
People
out
wanted
yet.
Xenoblade 2.
Yeah, Xenoblade 2 wasn't a thing yet, and this was not quite that. So
Yeah, it was an interesting because I did the original review for this game
Right.
back on Wii U. It just definitely was like I didn't know what to expect because I played Xenoblade 1, I liked it, but I didn't know what like a new Xenoblade what to expect out of new Xenoblade. And back then you had like less expectations because they didn't have like a whole series set in stone that had a formula. So them being experimental with the follow-up was like this is really cool, like them flipping the whole formula on its head and it being way more open and just it's the inverse of Xenoblade 1 almost where we always say this about this game where like the main narrative not its greatest thing but the side content like the side quest stories are like really good in this unlike the first Xenoblade. And I guess just to very much quickly touch base, it's still the same OST, right? It's still the Sawano Hiroyuki
Yes.
Sawano OST.
Yep. I think the I saw other previews mention this, although I don't think they're. Oh, I think it's because it's in the menu even before you get a skull. There's the flight music for the skull.
Mhm.
You can turn off the vocals if you want. I haven't actually tried this, and then there's a remixed version, which is like it's similar. It's not exactly the same. It's not like dramatically different, but there's like 3 different flight themes now. As far as the original content
can you shuffle
goes,
those? Can you like randomly shuffle those?
I don't think you can shuffle. I think you have to go in the menu and pick.
Okay.
In terms of like the original content of the game for music, I think that's the only difference. All the other music's the same, and like not refined or updated or anything. It's just the same.
Cool. I mean, I love the OST for
Yeah. So I sometimes see like people, some people say, oh, they love this OST, which it's fair, and then some people are like, how can anyone love this OST? It's just
I got the exact feeling when I was in back in GameFAQs back in the day. People like bash the soundtrack of this game like nonstop. I'm like, what is going on here?
Okay, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of the new LA theme. It's kind of goofy, and
it's so good.
You do hear a lot of it. You kind of it does grow on you. But like, okay, here's my opinion. So like, Oblivia. So Oblivia is kind of like the deserty region of this game. It has like this kind of really heavy percussion, high brass, really triumphant sort of soundtrack. And this is the type of soundtrack that just like gets me like pumping my fist in the air, like really, really triumphant, kind of like full brass band energy to it that I really love for Primordia. And then like Noctilim has this sort of like, it's a jungle. It's kind of like this jungly kind of theme with some vocals on there, and kind of a similar kind of high energy when like the voice comes in. For that, I'm not even going to try to emulate it because I couldn't do it justice. And then Sylvalum has more of the kind of like toned down, kind of more like beautiful, melodic kind of soundtrack, in this more snowy, white kind of area of the game, which I think is very suitable. And Caldros is kind of very hostile and threatening. And I think those soundtracks for like those 4 zones especially are really good.
Yes.
And I don't think they're even like some of those. Noctilim, I think, is the most that's like, oh, this is definitely a Sawano soundtrack. But I think like Primordia, it's obviously it's Sawano. I don't want to take credit away from him, but it's not like so weird and different where it would like be out of place in other games. I think it's a good track.
Sawano can't do normal tracks.
Yeah.
I always point to like the original first season of Seven Deadly Sins where Sawano composed that, and it's a fantasy themed show. So you actually got Sawano to do like a non-sci-fi setting, very traditional fantasy, and he knocks it out of the park.
I think of Gundam Unicorn.
Yeah, that's sci-fi heavy, but still really, really good soundtrack. But then you have stuff like Sawano, where like the unique monster theme of Xenoblade X is like a breakup song.
Oh yeah.
Between it's a really cool song, but it's so out of place. Yeah, it's like that's what did you mean by this?
And
song?
then of course there's New LA's soundtrack, which I will try to emulate here. I apologize in advance. Where it's just kind of like, yeah, yeah. It's like, okay.
I love that sounds like a long running in game like or long running like inside joke between my friends that I have. Like we'll just randomly just spat out whenever someone says LA.
We like that Team America joke. The Team America song.
Yeah, it's Sawano's. He's varied. If nothing else, he's varied.
So thank you, Adam, for going into pretty heavy detail about the changes coming to Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition. And like you said, we'll be talking about it again once it fully releases so that you can, be not under the embargo restrictions. You can talk about your full impressions of the game, its story, its characters, and all those things. So obviously you'll be able to tee off on this conversation when we get into that one once Definitive Edition releases later in March. And yeah, do check out the article on rpgsite.net. The title is "Here's What's New in Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition So Far." And it sounds like you're planning to update that article once the full review embargo lifts.
Yeah, there's a couple. Like I said, there's a couple other things I want to add to it, and also like I don't know if I'll do this, but like maybe I'll load up my Wii U version of the original game and try to like do a more like because there might be changes that I'm not like aware of. Like, oh, I forgot that this is tweaked a little. Like, oh, like one small thing. I think the way that fashion equipment works is slightly different. I know this was the original game where like you could change a character's clothing to be not what they were wearing, like transmog type stuff. And I think it might work a little differently now, but I don't remember exactly how it worked before. So stuff like that.
So we have a couple other games that we're going to talk about before we go into the small amount of news. Both just little quick pit stops on both of these. And I probably should have brought this up at the beginning of the podcast, but if I sound under the weather, I've been fighting off a cold. So if I sound a little nasally, I apologize. I'll be back to normal next week. So a little quick pit stop here to talk about a game that released last week that I finished over the week as I was sick and took a few days off my day job. Trails Through Daybreak 2, of course, is the most recent release for the Western Hemisphere of the Trails Kaseki series. Scott wrote the review for us. We put that up on the site. I kind of mentioned that I've kind of been trying to like keep up with these as they release in the West, and I actually kind of brought up like I'll have to speak to this game in a little bit of a limited fashion. Of course, James, Chow, and Josh have played or witnessed the events of the next game in the series, Kaino Kaseki. Adam is behind on the Western release, so I'm really kind of speaking for myself here, and of course, maybe a little bit for the audience, people who are in the same boat as me and Scott. But when this game released, and James did some import impressions, and Josh talked about his feelings of the game when it came out in Japan, all that stuff. The reception, from my perspective, was a bit muted. It felt like a tangent game, like an unplanned game. Of course, at the end of Daybreak, there are some lingering threads, specifically with the remaining Genesis object that obviously the sequel would follow up on, which Daybreak 2 does. But all the ideas of what is Crimson Sin, the subtitle that got dropped with the Western release, things like that. So when I played through this game, I kind of had like a weird, like I don't know what my preconceived notion was because I had kind of heard a bunch of things, and I just I tried to put those aside to the best of my ability, and it was just like, all right, let me just see what this game is. And the first couple acts of this game, I really did enjoy. They're kind of diversionary, but not in a bad way, more in like a world building way. Speaking in very broad strokes, the first act talks a little bit about like the remnants of the Almada group and like their footprint that was left after the events of the first game. You get a little bit of like character interaction between some people from the first game that didn't quite get closure, but it does introduce some new characters that are working under one of the Anguisses in the first game. I forget his name actually. His title is the Oathbreaker. He makes an appearance here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I forget his name, but he's the Oathbreaker. And without spoiling anything, I'm going to speak generically. I kind of liked how he was used early in the game, but then as he kept appearing in Daybreak 2, he seemed like he was just like stirring shit up without any real goal. And the goals that he does lay out are very contrived later. So this game, one of the playable party members is Ren, who is a long-standing character in the series. And she gets a lot of closure in this game, but it's handled in a way that is very strange. And I don't know if I can go into any more detail on that. It's like, I'm glad she got closure. I like the Oathbreaker as a character. But the way that Elroy, that's it. Elroy Harwood. Yep. All right. Yep.
I remember this character a lot in both versions because he has such a good voice actor for both English and Japanese for this guy. So you just kind of remember him.
Yeah, I haven't heard his English voice. It's really funny though how in Japanese it's like he's not even trying to do a different voice. It's just his regular
Cute.
voice.
Kyo's voice, right?
Yeah, it's Kuroda. Yeah, Takaya Kuroda.
Oh, it's Crota. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah,
reminds me. I need to download that Rusty Rabbit demo.
Me too. I need to do that.
That-
Go on, Brian.
And then the second act goes into a little bit more about the Aramis school, which is the main like academy in not Crossbell, in Calvard, in Edith, and a little bit of you get more interaction with Swin and Nadia, who are introduced kind of off screen in either Cold Steel 3 and 4 with the 3 and 9 series, and then they make their first like main appearance in Hajimari, which I'm forgetting what it's called in English.
Reverie.
Yeah. And I even when Revelry came out, I liked their branch, their part of C's branch in that game the best. Because that introduces Swin and Nadia really to the forefront, and all the stuff with Lapis and Elysium and all that stuff. But in this game, like Swin and Nadia are just like very genuine characters in a series where so many characters have like ulterior motives or a past life, or I used to be like a military soldier when I was 11, and now I'm 14 and I'm a hardened veteran sort of stuff. And Swin and Nadia do have a little bit of that because they are part of the garden like group.
Yeah.
So they do have that, but they're just very genuine with each other, and like they feel like they could be true blue protagonists in their own right, in their own game. I guess they're probably a highlight for me of Daybreak 2, just the more exposure that they got. The way they get it is a little bit contrived. They end up one of their chapters is actually called like Substitute Spriggans, and they hold down the fort in Edith while Van and Co are out in another place, I think in Langport. But still, like I enjoy their characters a lot, and they get a lot of closure, and they shot up my like favorability list pretty.
You're not
majorly.
upset like the Western community when they had that one line. I'm gonna up my risk game.
Oh, I don't know. That stuff doesn't really bother me. Like,
I mean,
they have
also,
good-
I mean, when you played the game in Japanese, if there was one specific character in all of Trails that would make those sorts of comments, it would be Nadia. It would be her. It's yeah, I don't know. It feels like the same sort of thing as when people were complaining about the one Randy comment in the Trails from Zero, or was it the Azure?
The bra moment.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, he'd say
that's totally
that,
what Randy
though.
would say. Yeah, but the where were they going with this? They're
Genuine
so the first two
characters,
acts, the first two acts are like touching on like side stories. Like there's not a lot of main plot movement, but I'm okay with that in concept. Like I don't like this idea like if it's not furthering the main plot, then it's filler, quote unquote. Like I like the world building there is good. But then like in the like there's like an intermission like on a beach, which is like activities and connecting events, which is a little bit contrived as it always is, but it's fine. It has like more character moments, but then in Act 3, it goes into something that the game introduces early, which I believe, unless my brain is failing me, is unique to this game, the rewind mechanic. So basically, you'll encounter story events which basically end up in bad ends. Like characters will die, like you will fail, and then the game will just rewind, and it's contextualized in the power of the Genesis, and I'll leave it at that. And then the characters will be like, I'm having deja vu. I feel like we shouldn't do this. Let's take a different route. And the first couple times this happens, I'm okay with it. I'm like, all right, this is a little strange. I don't know if I like this implementation, but let me give it the benefit of the doubt. Um, but then it happens so frequently that the characters actually start calling like they call this phenomena rewind, and they're like, "Wow, we had to use rewind," and they speak about it like so blasé by the end of the game, where it's just like, well, I guess that way fucking killed us. Let's try something else. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Now they're just treating it on its face, and this is maybe a little bit unfair, but it recontextualizes something in the Crossbell duology, where a pretty major event happens at the end of Trails to Azure, which recontextualizes a pretty major event in Trails from Zero around a similar concept that I thought was almost immaculately done. And now Daybreak 2 kind of implements it in this weird I don't want to say half-assed, but this weird like
It's a
gamey,
different
arcadey
context.
way.
It's a different
Let
context.
let Brian finish his thought. Like,
Yeah.
so don't stop interrupting
Like
him.
in the universe, the way that these two phenomenons occur is different. One is a power of a specific character, and one is like an ability from these devices. So like they are implemented differently with an outcome that is similar but not identical. I think maybe Act 3, the way that Act 3 kind of decided to design itself is that it goes ham on the concept where it ends up forking like 6 or 7 different ways. And in a way, I actually kind of like it, where it's like you had to navigate through these series of perilous events where, unless you play your cards exactly right, it will result in failure. But I think it did it to an extent where the failures ended up feeling a little bit cheap is again too strong of a word, but it's that idea where it's like, oh, I guess doing it that way killed us. Let's try this. Oh, I guess doing it that way killed us. Let's try this. I guess doing it that way killed us. Let's try this. And it's like it was one or two too many times I felt. And that was kind of my main takeaway. So I like the concept in the beginning. I like the idea they were going through Act 3 in terms of making it like a widely branching chapter. I just think that maybe it was one or two swings too many.
I
Is I
think
guess
about
my
this,
takeaway
right?
off the cuff.
Yeah. Think about this, right? I mean, when you think about in context of like what you went through and what actually happened, quote unquote, in the real storyline, like how that manifests in that real storyline of like there are these things on the table, and then you blink, and then there's a lot of things on the table, and it's like
Yeah.
it's comical almost. Where it's just like it's stupid, you know?
Yeah, it's a
Like,
comedy for sure, I would say.
Yeah.
and a lot of like what you're saying, it's like about these dead ends and branches of them, even getting to the point of them acknowledging and coining a term of rewind and almost borderline abusing, like taking this for granted, right? It makes them
Yeah.
do it makes them do very out of character things where it almost feels like they're kind of almost betraying the characterization of what they've built up these characters to be in terms of like just general competence levels and intelligence sometimes.
And
It's like
some part, it's like, couldn't they just run away? No, they just get killed, and you're like, oh,
yeah, it's
let's
one
use
of
that
those.
again.
It makes so many narrative compromises to the point that like it breaks. It breaks a lot of like what a lot of my complaints about this game. It's not even my only complaint, but a lot of my complaints this game. It's like you've established this bond and trust to make us love your characters, and that's great. But then you like, but you're so eager to undo it because you have to make a narrative compromise because you've written yourself into like a narrative that dead end almost of like how do you communicate this concept, and it's just like, and for me, I've played a good chunk of like time travel stories. I've read a lot of time travel stories, so I'm it's not like it's the first time I've ever been exposed to one, but like it's so easy to like to really fuck up time travel stories, and this one makes so many like commits so many sins of time travel stories of like of why they're so hard to craft, and when you do it wrong, you really fuck up. You really fuck it up. There's never really a travel story where like it's like in the middle of like it was okay, but it could have been better. It's usually they really fucked it up, or really like really well. It's very, you don't see too many middle of the road time travel stories because you really have to kind of execute the concept pretty well to sell the concept.
Which I think they did in the Crossbell duology.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
uh-huh,
I do like I said, I'll just reiterate this point because I think it's my key point here,
yeah.
is that early on in the first couple acts where the rewind happens and they just have like a sense of foreboding, a sense of deja vu. It's not like they have a memory of the past event. And it's like, okay, I can buy that, where they're like going into an area that in a previous branch, quote unquote, they fail, and they're like, I feel like we need more support. We need to take a different route. And I'm like, okay, I can buy that. But I think what cemented my opinion at the end of it being a little bit underbaked was there's a line where near the end of the game, I forget who says it. They're like, and we didn't even have to use rewind. Like, oh, we didn't even have to do this magical thing to survive this time. Like
Oh,
they treat it so blasé. And it's like, if they kept it more as like this sense of foreboding, I would have bought it a little better. A couple other things I think the game does well. For a Kaseki game, it keeps the cast relatively small. I think even by the time all said and done, even in the post game, your party size is 17, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually
Hey, that's smaller than Trails
not-
Third, I think.
I think Trails Third is 15.
Oh, I thought
And
it
to be
was
fair, like
18.
the Reverie corridor in Reverie has like you end up getting like 6, 7, 8. I'm trying to remember a good handful of like post game exclusive characters. Where this game only has 2, so it kind of reins it in. And then during out the main story, you don't have access to the full cast everywhere until like near the very end of Act 3 and then the finale. So like as you go to Langport, you get Aaron in the party, of course. Early in the game, you have Elaine. Later in the game, you kind of get everyone. So I actually kind of like it where it's like, okay, in this part of the story, I don't have access to Swin, but I do have access to Aaron, and their kits are similar but different. So I actually do kind of like that. I will say that the 2 characters that feel like they could have been cut out are the 2
Railsrider?
yeah,
Pretty useless.
Leon and Celis.
Yeah.
They're introduced in the first Daybreak game, and they're moderately important characters. And then here in like late Act 1 or early Act 2, they kind of show up without a lot of good reason. They're just kind of there. And then they are not present until like the very end of the game. And it feels like the story could have easily been written where they just weren't present. Like it feels like they have no business being there. And I'm not saying like, how dare you be here? It's just like, I think you could have kept the cast a little bit smaller and tight knit, and you put them in for not a lot of payoff. They're just kind of there. And I forgot that they were in my party at the end. Like, oh yeah, they're still here.
Brian, how do you feel about the word corrosion after this game?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The corrosion. This is not maybe a fair comparison, but it made me think about the red evil energy goop from Cold Steel 4. It's kind of similar in the way it's executed. And what it basically does on a gameplay front is that it gives you story substantiation for why you would come to blows with certain characters who you would otherwise not have conflict with. Like, oh, let's have a boss battle with I don't want to name any characters, like 2 random characters from the series. Why would you ever fight them in a boss battle? Well, corrosion just kind of explains why you would. Like it's fun in that sense for the gameplay, I guess. Like, oh, we have to defeat this entity, and that involves me coming to fights with Estelle. Estelle's not at the game.
Yeah.
But
We'll just pretend something else.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say how I felt about it, I'm not sure if I said it on the podcast before, is that I don't hate it as much as the curse in Cold Steel 4, specifically because the way that they frame it and what corrosion actually does, it doesn't completely remove the agency. I guess it's kind of hard, like getting into the weeds, but what it does is it's like, no, it's like corroding their memories. So this is how they would have acted if certain things had gone differently. And it I don't know if that makes any sense. It's still kind of stupid.
It's super stupid. It kind of comes out of nowhere in this game. Like at least the curse. To be clear, both of them are fucking stupid. The curse, but at the very least, the curse has a little bit more build up because that's like a game and a half of build up to the curse. While corrosion comes kind of out of left field, out of nowhere in this game. So, but it's like comparing one pile of dog shit to another pile of dog shit. It's in the end, no one wins. Sort of type of deal for me. So, like,
I think I fall more on the James front, where I don't really like either, but I think I do like the corrosion a little bit more because it's basically an act of an antagonistic force more directly than the curse, which is more of a long-standing thing.
Yeah, the thing that I hated about the curse is that it was so inconsistent, where it's like, on one hand, it's like, oh, it's only like getting like characters to do things that they would have done otherwise, when there's multiple instances in Cold Steel 4 where it's like that doesn't add up. Whereas with corrosion, it's very, even if it's stupid, it's very clear that it's like, no, they wouldn't normally do this. The reason they're doing this is because the corrosion has basically changed what they perceive the past to have been. It's still stupid, but it's still an action those characters would have taken if that stuff had actually happened to them in the past.
And the source of the corrosion is this antagonist being a bad guy. Like, it's a little bit more direct in that sense.
Yeah. Again,
but of
don't
course,
really
it's always
like
like you
either.
gotta beat.
It's just, it's just
I think we're all kind of in a similar boat, just kind of landing on different spots of the chart. Yeah.
Obviously, we won't say
Yeah.
it out loud. We won't say it out loud. But what did you like the gimmick of the final fight in this game? I thought it was sick as fuck.
I actually kind of liked it. Yep. The final fight does a very gimmicky thing that I liked. There you go.
Yeah.
So
And just like the first game, I do like between the two Daybreak games, I think my favorite antagonist is still Dantes. Mainly because his English voice actor, I forget his name, but he felt perfectly cast for that role. And he just felt like a genuine, like, not like a bad guy that you have to feel sympathetic for because he had bad circumstances, or he like or like a chaotically evil Kefka. Like, he was just like a bad dude who had a lot of people on his side, and I really like Dantes a lot.
I actually love Armada as a group. I think they're like really good villains. Orobo is just kind of like watered down over the years. I don't even know what the hell their goals are like half the time. They're just here to be an asshole. And then if you win, they'll say that was part of the plan. If you lose, that was also part of the plan. It's like, what the hell is wrong with these people? It's like, so I don't.
It's all part of the plan, child. Okay, you have to understand.
More Ouroboros people are on your side in this game than as an antagonist. And then like Harwood, at the end, he's just like, he was going against orders, but you don't know what his orders really were. So he's like not in their good graces, but he's still employed by them. It's very much like my machinations are too complex for you mere people to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah, so it's kind of like, what are you doing? Why did I even fight you and your cronies all game? I don't quite get it. So
Harwood, and you'll see even more of that in the next game, but it's like, it's kind of hard to tell exactly where they're heading with him. He's very much, he's evil, but he's probably closer to like chaotic and neutral by the end of Kai, if that makes sense. So
he's cool and sexy, so he's okay.
Yeah.
I do like how his like attack moves are like him lighting a cigarette and then walking towards you and leaving a trail of fire behind him and things like that. He's like, yeah, that seems like a sort of character that Kuroda would voice in Japanese.
I'm not sure if you ever get this, but when you play through, is it Act 2, Part B? There's like a group of terrorists that like took over the place.
Oh,
does this guy not look like a certain person's dad?
There's a terrorist that looks like there's a minor terrorist antagonist that looks like I forget his name, Mr. Bright.
Yeah. Many questions the people are asking.
That joke. It's like, yep, he lost his kids and now he became a racist.
God. It is crazy how it is crazy. I guess neither here nor there. How like Daybreak 1 already had it as a very like explicit theme, but Daybreak 2 like doubles down on like Calvard's like whole B plot is if you're a white supremacist, you should fucking die. Like,
hey, at least in Daybreak 2, you can play basketball with Anyas and break people's ankles with Anyas. Game. And be like, damn, you're the captain of the basketball team, and this white woman just broke her shit.
She's balling.
He's balling, dude.
I think the last thing I'll say is I like the optional kind of parallel dungeon thing in this game, that the analog to the Reverie Corridor is called like the Marching Garden. And I think it's implemented a little better. It's a little less. It takes a little less time to get through. I think the Reverie Corridor was almost a little bit over designed, and I think also part of that is just having fewer characters. Like, your party is not 49 total characters; it's 17.
Yeah.
So it feels just a little bit more manageable.
Did you like the return of Gacha in this game?
The Gacha, it ends up being such a minor thing that it almost doesn't. It almost doesn't like matter.
Who up smashing they cube?
The Gacha animation is goofy.
Yeah, you get so many, like, you get like a currency that you then just fill the cube, and every 10,000 it pops and gives you like costumes and consumables and things. And there'd be times where I'd have enough, right? I like to hold down the button and then like watch a YouTube video as my cubes popped or whatever. But yeah, so I enjoyed it. I think I like Daybreak more, but Daybreak 2 is still like, if you started with Daybreak, I still think Daybreak 2 is perfectly fine for a newcomer.
Really? Wow, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, like, because like a lot of the only thing I'll say is all the Ren stuff really would kind of
No, I would think the
be.
Swin and Nadia stuff as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
that's yeah. I'm able to rethink that because it's hard. The thing is that it's hard for me to say like I think this is a sign for a newcomer when I'm not a newcomer in that sense. Like I think
I
you can be fine if
I
you don't
think
have this past knowledge.
I think Daybreak 2 is in like a similar situation as like Cold Steel 2, where it's like most of it's fine, but the things that are a bit of a problem are definitely like pretty explicit. And in the same in a more extreme sense, nobody should be expecting to play Kai having not played the rest of the
Yeah.
series. It's
nope. You know what? You better have Kai as your first game. Hell
oh
yeah!
god. Oh
Let's
god.
go.
I think the last little game we want to talk about before we go into news is we slotted a little corner here for you, Josh, to talk about the demo that released for the 100-line Last Defense Academy on Steam.
Yep, the hot new game developed by Media Vision. They're back along with that Digimon. They're working with Tokyo Games, so that's the studio that what were their names again? You just put it in the chat. It's
Rui Komatsuzaki, the artist.
yeah, the artist, and then it was Kodaka and Uchikoshi. So that was the studio that they made. That they recently released like Master Detective's Raincode. That was from them as well. So this is an interesting one. So this is like you said, the 100-line Last Defense Academy. It's coming to Switch and Steam on April 24. But like way before launch, they had this prologue demo that you can transfer over your save data, and I was pretty interested. I was like, okay, like this is. It looked like a strategy RPG at first from the gameplay, but it's very like adventure visual novel focused as well. So it's less like I'd say it's less of an RPG and more like adventure visual novel.
I saw like three
game.
different people in three different contexts, probably jokingly, but also there's probably some seriousness here. Like, oh, it's just Danganronpa tactics.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. I mean, that's kind of the curse of Rui Komatsuzaki in the West is when you see their art style, you definitely think of Danganronpa first for most people. It's like they have a very distinct style. Anytime like you see like they design servants for Fate Grand Order, or you see them in other their character designs other games like the Raincoat, the first thing you'll see from like the chat a chat room with mainly Western speakers is it's the Danganronpa dude. You know,
I am one of those people.
yeah. It's fine. I mean, but so this game is strange because it's kind of like flipping the its head off like the Danganronpa formula in a weird way. So this, as soon as you hit new game, you're pretty much watching like almost a full length anime episode. It has a very long anime cutscene, that basically introduces you to your main character Takumi Sumino, um and talking about he lives a very typical day to day life as a high school student. You know, like he has a childhood friend. They walk together to school, same routine every day. You know, living a very normal life. Then you learn that they are part of this. Like they call it the TRC a lot. I'm trying to remember what it's um stands for. It's like the Tokyo Recreational Colony or Center or something like that. But you quickly find out that they are not like actually on like the real world Earth sort of thing because there's a dome over this city. But you don't know like if this is like this dome is there's like there's something it's still on a planet and like there's a ruin, maybe it's ruined outside or they're in space. Like you don't know. You just know there's like a dome over this city and so forth. And like that's kind of sort of strange. But you know they're living a simple day to day life. And all of a sudden, like there are these alarms that blare throughout the city that tell civilians, hey, find shelter where there's another attack or there's something that like there's a military exercise or whatever. So please find shelter. We'll let you know when it's safe to go back outside. They're like, okay, that's sort of not that's kind of weird. So the main character and his childhood friend they like enter like a nearby pothole because there's like a rest center or retreat center inside that pothole. So they wait a few minutes, they come back out. Um and when they emerge, um there's this weird scene where the main character pops out of the pothole, but a dog scares him. So he actually falls down the ladder and then down the stairs by the ladder. But he's perfectly fine, even though this would like either kill someone in real life or like break all their bones. It's like, oh, I just fell down the ladder and down the stairs. Let me just get my bearings. While his childhood friend, you know, emerges from the pothole to go chase after this dog that scared him, and like he goes after them into the school area. The school area is sort of weird because it's like abandoned and run down. And while you're looking for his childhood friend, Karua is her name. I'll try to find the name. He meets this strange, almost like this egg character. It's like an egg mascot with a hat and a bow tie, but it's like a transparent egg with like little arms and legs, and you can see its brain, like an actual brain inside like the egg, and a little heart shape symbol
if you watch the
inside it with a
trailer that
heart.
launched with the demo, it shows a lot of that egg
Yeah,
character.
yeah. And this like the mascot of the game. His name's Sire, and Sire's like, I've been looking for you. There's something special about you, and so and so and so. And you're like, what the fuck? I'm just looking for Karua, you know. And you're like, would you do anything to protect her or whatever? He's like, oh, whatever. I'm looking for my childhood friend. So this all still in the opening cutscene. You're pretty much still watching this anime episode of everything I'm detailing. It's like an abridged version of what I'm detailing. Eventually, you meet up with your childhood friend. There's like this big alarm, like catastrophic alarm that's like never been heard before. Um, so like you're like, we need to get the hell out of here. And so as you're like running through the streets with your friend, you see like these almost like cutesy like creatures, um, like assaulting people, and it gets pretty graphic where they're like kind of like tearing off their limbs at some points. And it's pretty. If people if you're listening to this podcast right now and you had the unfortunate time of like watching Blood Sea for whatever reason, it's like the final episode of Blood Sea where like everyone's getting decapitated. It's sort of like that. So eventually those two kind of get like knocked out by one of the enemies, and like you see that your childhood friend got knocked out like a little ahead of you, and you're trying to save her, but like you're feeling weak and you're kind of feeling like exhausted as the enemies are encroaching upon her. So the egg dude, the Sire, shows up. He's like, you'll do like you said you're willing to do anything to like save her, right? It's like, I can give you the power so to save her. So he like reproduces this like knife like this dagger, and he's like basically stab it into yourself and you can fight off the creatures. So Takumi stabs that knife into himself, and he gets and it forms like a blood cocoon around him, and he emerges like in this like uniform, like it shows in all the artwork, with a sword. And this is where you get the tutorial of how to play the game, and so forth. Um, I'll get into the gameplay in a little bit, but so you do the tutorial stuff. Eventually, Takumi has to is like forcibly like separated from Karua, and like because the egg dude like basically transports him somewhere else, um, like floating in the air away from this. So he gets separated from Karua, and then you wake up at this academy facility, and with like several other characters, like pretty much like the secondary cast, that they're all kind of fucked up in their own ways. Like Takemaru is like this white-haired tough guy, gangster sort of archetype, where like he means well, but like he's like, don't get me angry. When I get angry, I just start hitting dudes and I can't control myself. I won't hit women or children, but I'll hit like dudes around me if I get mad. So don't make me mad, or like if I'm mad, don't be near me because I can't help myself but want to like punch dudes. You're like, all right, I guess. But other than that,
Okay,
he's
that's very specific. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I was like, all right, that's cool, I guess. Just all right. Then you have this long black dark haired girl named Hiriko. She wears glasses, and she's like the kind of like the ice queen sort of archetype of the game. Where she's very cold, mature, and very logical. You find out, shortly later, that she also has sort of like a sadist side to her. So um, then here you have like there's this character, kind of like the Joker archetype almost, named Darumi. She has like pigtails, blue hair. She has like kind of like a crazy design. She has like a tattoo of like teeth to like the left side of her mouth. So she kind of gives off that Joker vibe. But she's like the Danganronpa fan self insert character, where like her first dialogue is like, "Whoa, we all got transported. Is this a death game? Are we all gonna kill each other? You know, sort of stuff. Is this like your typical death game premise, etc." So it's the
Like a wink and a
obnoxious
nod,
yeah, it's the obnoxious Danganronpa fan self insert. You know, she's insane, deliberately so. Um, she's a lot. She's a lot. And then there's so the other characters in the game that I'm not gonna all detail. I guess the only other pairing that I'll detail is like there's this I forgot their names. Kako and forgot the name of her twin brother, but like they're the Tsukumo twins, Ima, and Kako Tsukumo. They're the Brocon and Syscon representatives of the game. They're siblings, they're pairings, but they're sorta like into each other. Ima more so than Kako in a weird way, where Ima's like he's very overprotective of his sister, but like kind of gets a little bit sensual with her. And Kako is really into the thought of like being stolen by another person away from her twin brother. Um, Look, man, I didn't write these characters, so it's kind of odd. In that way. Um, and and of course the egg dude mascot is like not the mastermind, but like the commanding officer of this whole getup. At first, we don't know his superiors or anything, but at the moment you think he's the mastermind of this whole ordeal, and I don't know if that changes or not. But your task, if you want to get back to your normal life, is you have to hold out and defend this academy for 100 days. There's like that encroaching alien force that like assaulted those people. They're um trying to get into this academy and invade it and breach it for something, but they haven't really spelled out like what you're protecting yet in this academy that those aliens really want. So you're kind of forced into like it's not a death game in the sorts of like you're trying to kill the other characters, but you're trying to survive together in this academy and hold off these waves of enemies that show up, every like once every few days, and so forth. So when it comes to like the gameplay of this game, so far early in the beginning, it's a lot of like defend this structure, like that provides the shields of the academy. So it's like very much a protect this structure type of game, and you have up to 4 characters on the field in this strategy grid based format, and it's more so. It feels more so like a puzzle type of a puzzle strategy game. I keep wanting to say RPG, but it's really not an RPG. The stats are very basic in the sense that like there's not like a hard attack or defense stat that you manage in the game, and like the damage values are pretty low. Where like your max HP is like for a character on average like it's like 10 to 14, and when you're dealing damage, it's like 2 damage, 4 damage, or like powerful single attacks are like
Yeah, that feels more like
10,
a
10
pure
damage.
strategy to me.
Yeah, yeah. But there are interesting, neat things about it. The control format is weird though, where like in order to move in the game, you use AP, and you start off with like 4 AP. When it's your turn, you can attack uh nearby enemies, and usually it's not like most attacks are like AoE, so they hit like multiple grid spaces. But it's not like you move with a command and then attack with a command. It's all tied into one command where you use attack and then you move that attack highlight towards an enemy, and then your character will simultaneously move and attack. Now there is a separate like dash command that you can use for to consume AP on, but you don't want to do dash and then attack because that's consuming 2 AP when you can just do attack and then highlight the enemies and then do that baked in move for 1 AP. So that's like just the more efficient way to do it. Dash is more so like if you're trying to get to the other side of the map and you're not anywhere near close to them, then that's when you use dash. So when you use a command with a character, you use their AP to attack some enemies. They'll be inflicted with a status called fatigue for that turn. You can use them again, but their mobility is heavily nerfed. Like they only move like 1 or 2 spaces over. So like because they're tired. So you can still use them like to take out nearby enemies near them, like in their immediate vicinity. But yeah, they're not much else. Like you don't have normal mobility until the next turn. Um, and and um and the different there's different attack ranges per character. So some characters can like have a skill that can hit like 5 enemies in a horizontal line. Like the tough guy gangster dude is like on a motorcycle, and his attack pattern is like he'll do like a 360 AoE with his basic attack. So he'll hit like basically everything in his immediate vicinity, which is really helpful for some enemy waves and so forth. So it's all of them have different like ranges and spaces and patterns that they can fill with their attacks. So that's why it's like more so a puzzle game of like trying to get the most out of these attack patterns and letting as few um invaders in as possible, which is pretty interesting in terms of like, hey, you're trying to manage like more so wave management more so than like individual enemies. There are like tougher enemies though that have like more than like 1 or 2 HP points that like you really want to focus down. So some characters like the glasses cold ice queen character has like a big axe that like she's really good at single target damage. So like you'd want to use her as like your heavy hitter for like bosses and those enemies that have like a little bit more health. Um, One of the interesting early game mechanics that they introduce you early on is that death is like your character is dying as a total normal part of the game loop, because when a character dies, um, you have this gauge called the voltage gauge, and it fills up little by little when you're taking out enemies and doing actions. And like when it reaches like at least 100%, you can do like a big super move with someone. Though when they do a super move, it stuns them for the next turn. So you have to like be pretty tactical with it. But if a character dies, it'll immediately boost that voltage gauge like plus 100%. So it can go over 100. So let's say you have 89 and someone dies, you'll get 189 voltage for someone that. And there's full friendly fire in this game, so you can deliberately like attack your characters to gain like meter back at the cost of their life. When a character is also below 5 HP, they have like a last resort sort of attack where they can do a lot of damage with an attack at the cost of their own life as well. In that, and
That's just good strategy.
yeah, obviously. So there's like some interesting strategy chops to it, and there's obviously when characters see a character dying for the first time, like there's not really a spoiler, just happens so early on, but a character dies, everyone's grieving, and then that first character that dies is obviously is like the Danganronpa fan self insert obnoxious character, and then she just like shows up again, and then you learn that like they have the ability to revive. There's like a self revive facility that a drone like when a character dies, like a drone for the academy like picks up their corpse and like revives them like like in the infirmary at the academy, and it looks like nothing like an infirmary. It's like a drone facility almost. Um, and so death is like it feeds into the gameplay loop, and I think that character is revived for the next wave. I forgot how that works as well, because like sometimes there'll be a battle where like there's multiple waves where you take out one wave, then you go to the next part of the battle. And I think that character is revived for that as well. So it really encourages you like, hey, don't be afraid of like actually like kind of spending the life of your characters as a resource to gain to the upper hand of this battle. Like there'll be a like maybe a mission that's like, hey, the objective is to take down the boss, not necessarily take down every enemy, but the boss. So like if you're really trying to like shred down the enemy as fast as possible, it might be beneficial for you to like uh spend the life of like characters so you can buff up, continually do the super attack of the character that does a shitload of single target damage, things like that. So there's definitely interesting gameplay chops and strategy to that element that I think is interesting. I'm starting to see the gameplay loop of like, hey, since you're trying to defend this academy for 100 days, it has like a day-to-day system of like, hey, it's day 5. How are you going to spend your day? Are you going to spend your day going to like the VR training facility so you can like gain skill points, like a resource to upgrade like um the moves of your characters, and then there'll be, but it'll have a resource cost to them, right? So it's not just getting that skill point; it's also you have to gain like other resources, um, whether it's like plastic or gears or this like generic coin currency, and then on top of that, some of those skills might need like a certain like grade um requirement where you need to spend time with the characters to go um upgrade like their grades, which are like you need like a 3 in mathematics, for example, to learn the next upgrade for this skill and so forth. Plus these resources, so you're dividing your time in those day-to-day segments of like, hey, when you talk to this character, like in Persona, it'll shift over to the next part of the day. So you have to be tactical about like who you want to spend time with to um, enhance their like stats or like their grade levels, or do you want to go out into exploration, which is like a board game to get like more materials, or go into the VR training facility to get skill points, etc. So there is that's kind of like the gameplay loop of like having that like defending that academy plus the day-to-day life activity stuff of upgrading your characters, at least early on in this demo. I'm sure there's gonna be more revelations as they progress the plot, and definitely there's a lot of unanswered questions of like where the plot is heading. So it's
How many days does the demo allow you to do?
I haven't finished the demo fully yet, so I don't know how many, but there seems to be like a good chunk. Like it's like a definitely multiple hour demo.
It's a pretty lengthy talk about it, so it must be a pretty long demo.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a cool like looking game. Like I'm really interested to see how the full game manages. Like I think the some of the character archetypes are really obnoxious and grating. Like there's this one character that constantly puts themselves down to the nth degree. Like it's like, oh, I'm really surprised you're talking to me. Like I'm usually like I'm such a flea, on the et cetera, et cetera. Like they really put themselves down a lot. You don't know why. You're just like this character is like very self defeating, for example, and that's their trait. That's just that's the character archetype we're going for. It's a super self defeating character. And it's like that sucks. That's not
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very some characters are okay. Most of the cast so far is like, this character, I'm already tired of this character, man. So, I don't know if that's what the fan base of these games want though. That's the thing, because as you pointed out, Brian, that this demo has like a super, super positive reception so far. And I can see why. I'm like, am I in the proper fan base for this game? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like kind of going to this really outside perspective. I've never been a big Danganronpa person.
Well, here's a question. Of the Danganronpa games, I'm assuming you've played them. Which was your favorite?
I like the first game, to be honest.
That's it.
I didn't. I don't like. I don't really. I'm not really. I don't really care much about 2. It's okay. V3 is like, But to be clear, like I've never like fully sat down and played like all of them except for the first one to completion.
Okay, because I was curious if because like V3 is my favorite, and I'm just kind of okay about the other ones. So I kind of want to hear from someone that liked V3.
For sure, yeah. I'm not the most qualified person to like talk about this game from that under that lens. I have a familiarity with those games, but I'm not like a super fan. I'm more of a passerby more so than like a fan of.
And you also have to wonder, people who are opting to play the demo likely are coming with, favorable to Danganronpa, Kumasazaki's art, or the Zero Escape author. Like this both has Uchi Koshi and Kodaka. I think they're both credited as writing 100 line.
I'm not
So
exactly
at least
sure,
it's
but
kinda,
I heard I don't know where this is from, and I don't know. I don't think it's a theory, but someone said like the writing duties between them was like they wrote different like parts of it and never looked at each other's like what they wrote. They like kind of stayed separate until like only for like 1 or 2 segments of the game. But other than that, they were like totally separate from each other, like what their responsibilities were on this project. I'm just like, that's crazy. like say like let's say one of them has like they wrote 2 endings, the other did like the other 2 endings. They never like looked at each other's notes of like of what they wrote to like accommodate for each other. It's like they kind of went their own separate ways. That's what I heard about the development of this game, and I'm like, that's crazy.
I mean, that is indeed one way to delegate tasks. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the most effective, but
Yeah,
it might be the most interesting.
yeah. So I'd have to like search up for like the source of like where that is, but that's what I heard around the grapevine.
Mm. And that I think covers it for all of our major and minor topics of this podcast. The only other thing we have is we do have one other preview feature up on the site for a CRPG, Solasta 2. So Solasta Crown of the Magister came out in like that pre-Baldur's Gate 3 era CRPG based on the Dungeons and Dragons universe. And when it came
Wait,
out, like I remember.
Did you already talk about Atelier or?
Oh, not yet. Sorry. Well, so 2 topics left. I apologize. Yeah, so Solasta 2, and then we'll talk about Atelier. Good catch. I would have missed it otherwise. So Scott did a preview for Solasta 2 up on the site. I remember downloading the first one, but never really I put like 3 hours into it, and I thought it was very rudimentary. It was very like early access crowdfunding feeling, which is not bad on its own right. But reading Scott's preview for Solasta 2, his main thing is that it feels like it's definitely gotten a boost in like just production values, which not everything is about production values, but they do kind of help sell a game in several ways. And it does use it is like another turn-based CRPG based on like D&D 5th edition. So if you're a person that really likes Dungeons and Dragons and Baldur's Gate 3, like it could be potentially an idea there, knowing that of course the studio behind it is much smaller than Larian. So it's one of those games that I'm interested in, but I don't know if I just have time for. But Scott was able to look into it for us and put his preview up on the site for Solasta 2. And then, yes, James, sorry about this. We also do have a preview that you went on hands-on for at Koei's offices for the upcoming Atelier Yumia, which is releasing also in March around the same time as Xenoblade Cross Definitive Edition. So yeah, tell us about your time getting your hands on with Atelier Yumia and what you're excited about for it.
So yeah, I was actually pretty shocked that Koei Tecmo even bothered to do an in-person preview event for Atelier, because like the series until Ryza was super niche, especially in the West. So I never expected there would ever come a time where they put the money down to literally have a preview event tour across not just North America, but there was also apparently a European branch of the Western Media Tour as well, because apparently Junzo Hisoi, who's the head of Gust, was literally in France the day before the preview event in San Francisco. So that was interesting to find out about. But yeah, I played a couple of hours of the PlayStation 5 version at Koei Tecmo's offices. I also had a chance to talk with Junzo Hisoi, interview him. Didn't do a separate interview piece because the transcription was a bit rough to do a proper like play-by-play interview, so I kind of had to just get the information I got and insert it in the preview. Just
yeah,
one
sometimes
of those
that happens
situations.
when you have like maybe like a few good like quotes from an interviewee, where it's just better to put them into like a preview, mix them in versus a standalone. So
Yeah, but yeah, it's really fascinating, some of the things specifically he said. Like I even mentioned it on Blue Sky. It's like a little bit before it went up, where it's like you never really know where the inspirations for something might come from. But I remember like it was kind of like a meme between Mikhail and I like years back, where we would ask Gus guys, hey, are you ever gonna support Xbox? And that was before like the thing last year where I kind of stopped giving a crap about the platform after everything regarding but apparently Junzo Soy has been a certified Xbox like super fan for like decades because he had the original Xbox. He really, really likes Halo. And like some of the inspirations for some of the gameplay changes to Atelier Yumia are actually like Microsoft published games like Grounded. Not this wasn't Microsoft published, but like Valheim and like some stuff in this is even inspired by Fallout. It's really fascinating. Like I guess I should kind of explain what exactly the changes are that kind of fits in with that. So one of the questions I asked him was, it's kind of fascinating how the Atelier franchise is like the one RPG franchise where what's really core to its identity is the gameplay specifically. I guess Dragon Quest in a sense too, but like Atelier, the one thing you know about the series, or two things are, there's like the cute girl protagonist, and then there's the synthesis system. Like item gathering, crafting, and there's a different sort of like crafting system every time. And Hosoya-san actually did say that when he was when they were starting development on Yumia, he thought, well, he plays a lot of survival crafting games. Again, like I said, he directly mentioned Valheim when I talked with him, but also I noticed in some other like interviews he said the same thing, where it's like he plays a lot of survival crafting games, and obviously in those you gather resources, you craft stuff, whether it's like buildings or equipment, and he realized that, wait a second, that's actually not too incompatible with Atelier because you're still gathering materials, you're still crafting stuff. It would fit in without feeling shoehorned. So there's some of that in Yumia where like the core gameplay loop from what I played of the preview and what I can talk about of what I've played of the PC preview key as well is you're basically charting this continent that has been abandoned ever since the fall of this one like super advanced empire. And the reason why it hasn't really been charted is that in whatever led to the collapse of this empire, there's a lot of areas of the world that are basically magically irradiated, in the sense that like in this world, mana is a thing where it's like the life stream in Final Fantasy VII, but there's like points of this continent where basically the mana has pulled and it's not safe to go through it because it has an adverse effect on your body and whatnot.
Magical nuclear radiation. That's
Magical cancer.
But yeah, so the reason and because like it's assumed that alchemy is what led to the fall of that old like civilization, alchemists are basically all but completely outlawed. And the only reason why Yumia, as an alchemist, is being allowed to basically roam free and do alchemy is because she is helping chart a path forward with her alchemical creations to actually explore these mana-bound areas and clear them. Because the way that alchemy works in Yumia is different from previous games where instead of having like a cauldron or something, alchemists directly interact with mana to make their ingredients. So instead of like having like an alchemical like pot or a cauldron, they're basically doing the synthesis with their own bodies. So because they have that ability, she can actually find the source of why the mana is still pulling together and basically fix it so that the rest of the expedition team can come in and they can set up outposts and basically get further and further into the continent and find out more about what happened, why, and what's going on now, and all sorts of stuff like that. It's a completely open world. You obviously get some points of interest that they want you to go towards, but beyond that, they kind of just let you do whatever. Exploration is fascinating. I mentioned it in my preview where there's some really smart like little tweaks that they've done to the world design that makes it so that the game really does want you to kind of like cheese your way to locations that feels like you shouldn't be able to go to. Like one thing you can do is like Yumia has a staff because almost every like Atelier protagonist has a staff, but her thing is that it's a gun staff, so you can go into like a Fortnite style third-person shooting to shoot at enemies to either stun them before you run up to them to engage with a battle, or you can actually shoot at ore deposits or like fruit in a tree or stuff like that in order to gather resources. But those ore deposits, if they're on a wall, Yumia can double jump, but only if she's up against a wall. So if you see like a trail of ore deposits going up a cliff, you can actually jump up, like using the double jump onto the ore deposits to reset the double jump and just use them as basically stepping stones to go up a vertical cliff,
That's
even if
funny.
you don't have even if you don't see another way forward. And it seems totally intentional.
That's
And
cool.
and there's also kind of fall damage, but instead like you have this resource called energy that literally is just used for like whenever you're in a mana bound area, that counter will go down. And basically you're safe as long as you still have energy. And there's fall damage, but in the sense that you don't lose HP as long as you have energy. Instead, it will use energy. But like I was saying, if you can see if you're looking over a cliff and you can see ore deposits, you can just use those to kind of like fall down safely too. And it's all sorts of little stuff like that with the way the open world is designed. You can like repair these zip lines to go to and from different places. You can unlock fast travel points. The world design is way more thoughtful than I would have originally expected, which maybe sounds a little bit derogatory, but I didn't really expect it from Gust, I guess.
Well, remind me. Rise of 3 was not open world completely. It was like large zones.
It was large zones. Each zone themselves, like each zone itself was very big, like very, very big. Like, for example, the first zone that you have in Rise of 3 is literally they took the entirety of the original Rise of 1's map and they just made it one big open world. And they added a few areas. So it's like, it was pretty much open world in the sense it was like Witcher 3 open world, if that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah, it's obviously still very early on, and I can't even talk about anything beyond what the preview embargo lifted. They did actually supply us with save files if we wanted to check out later parts of the game, and like I mentioned in my preview, I opted not to because it's like, well, I kind of want to see that in context, and I don't want to really harm the integrity of my playthrough, and I wasn't sure how much it would actually help with if I was restricting what I could say anyways. You understand. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I'm gonna keep playing it, but I won't be able to talk about it until like whenever the review embargo lifts. But yeah, it's very, very interesting to see such a massive shift. And I mentioned when you clear the mana bound areas, you can also make outposts. That's what I meant by like the Valheim sort of stuff. You literally have a full building system for like safe spots for like whenever you fast travel. Or like at the beginning of the game, you have one Atelier location, which is where you can do your alchemy. But when you make outposts, you can also do alchemy there, so you don't have to constantly travel from here and there and here and there just to do your synthesis stuff. And it's it's interesting. I'm very curious how people are going to feel about it. I do think some older Atelier fans are not going to be super happy with how much of an open world and how like freeform this game is, at least at the start. But I feel like they're doing a good job with what they're going for. And I'm curious how it's going to feel like, especially later on. But yeah.
So this podcast kind of ended up being like a March preview episode with you on Atelier Yumia and Adam and Colin, of course, on Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition. So both two releases in the back half of March that we're really looking forward to, and two very thorough previews up on the site, rpgsite.net. And of course, some significant look in at both of those games on this episode of the Tetracast. So thanks, Adam and James, for looking into those. So here we are nearing the third hour of this episode of the podcast. Luckily, we don't have a lot of news this week, though we do have a few things that we at least want to shout out before closing this thing out. James, I guess we'll go into something that you actually previewed for us last year, I believe, at TGS.
Yes.
We have a Western announcement announced for Mado Monogatari, Fia, and the Wondrous Academy, and an announcement trailer for this. This is from Compile Heart, released last November in Japan. You looked at it before the Japanese release in, like, I think September of last year, and it's slated for release on Switch and PlayStation this year in the West.
Yeah, I was wondering when it was going to get localized. I assumed it would because it felt like bluntly, Idea Factory doesn't have too much besides Neptunia, so it felt like something they would want to localize eventually, if that makes sense. But I'm definitely interested in checking this out. It's a little bit frustrating that Idea Factory is one of those developers, like, not so much nowadays, but it used to be a big problem with like NIS, where it's like they were very inconsistent when they put stuff on PC. And it's like, this is a dungeon crawler. People on PC love dungeon crawlers.
Yeah, so once again, it's probably gonna be a staggered release because Palhart loves doing that.
Yeah.
It's also I kind of just behind the scenes baseball. I feel a little bit bad for Kite on this because Kite went like when he did news for this game, right? He did it under the previous
Sorcery
Western name
Saga?
of Sorcery Saga.
That's
But
what I was
then-
wondering. It's like, that's like a pretty direct translation of Mado Monogatari. And it's, did they just decide, like,
I don't know.
did like Axis own the name for that? But Ghostlight published the PC version of that, so you'd think that the title wasn't a problem.
I wonder
I
if they
don't
just want to
know.
like try to maybe make Mado Monogatari like just the global branding for this and try to establish a foothold of that name. I don't know.
It's kind of like in another universe, Nino Kuni is called like Another World or whatever.
Yeah. So that's what I kind of stood out for me in this announcement. Hopefully they get the PC port out soon. You know, I have no
I've
idea
seen
what to
how
expect of this game.
I've
because
seen
we
how
got
this
heard-
game run. I've seen how
Wait.
this game runs on Switch. I'm not playing it on Switch.
Jeez. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about this game aside from like your preview. Like when it released in Japan, I just haven't heard anything about it after it released in Japan.
Maybe not a great sign, but I've heard a few things here and there, and it sounds like it's at worst okay.
I'm not, just because I haven't heard it doesn't mean it's like it's good or bad. It's just like it's usually I just don't hear anything.
Yeah. I think maybe a lot of people that would have imported it, like me, assumed that it was going to be localized sooner than later. So it's like, I'm not going to. And we were right, because it came out in November and it's already been announced for localization. So,
And when I was actually trying to like learn a little bit about this game, and then that's when I realized that you had previewed it, James, before talking about it on this podcast. Of course, the announcement of a localized version came with an announcement trailer. But the announcement trailer, like, I don't think I've seen an announcement trailer show less than this one does. Like, not even in like oh, it's a CGI trailer and it doesn't show gameplay. Like, this trailer doesn't show gameplay, but it's almost entirely like thumbnails, animated thumbnails of like character art and text, which is fine.
Classic.
But like when I saw this, like for instance, when James said this is a dungeon crawler, I'm like, oh, that's a good thing to learn because the trailer doesn't show that, like, or infer that. And obviously someone who like would be familiar with the series potentially already knew that. But when I was like, all right, I don't know much about the series. Let me watch the trailer to learn more about it. I watched it. I'm like, I learned nothing by watching this. So
Here's what you need to know. The series is where Puyo Puyo came from. Puyo Puyo is a spin-off of this series.
now I know.
There you go.
All right, two other game announcements here. This one's actually not a game announcement. It's an indie game that was first announced back in 2021. This is from an indie Indonesian studio called Ozygames for Buramato. And it's based on Bornean mythology. With Borneo, I had to remind myself, is one of the larger islands in the middle of the Indonesian archipelago. And this trailer, I watched it just wanting to see like what it was, and I actually came away like, all right, it's actually on my radar. So this is, I hate describing games as if they're amalgamations of other games, but just to try to paint the picture for a podcast that may not have the trailer in front of them, it feels like a combination of like Zelda, Okami, specifically Okami's art style, but with uh background music that almost sounds like it's from I'm blanking on it. What did I say? Dark Cloud. So I don't remember who the composer was for Dark Cloud, but this gave me Dark Cloud vibes. You know, hopefully that doesn't come across like Boss Baby vibes or whatever the meme is.
Hey,
But
most people haven't played Dark Cloud, so it's a perspective that you can have.
Yeah, okay. But the game still looks kind of like rough. Like it's an early trailer. It shows some like foundational gameplay, no UI elements. some light story elements that are told just through like prose on a black screen. But it seems promising, and I really think that the background music kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting here. It's whoever's composing this. I'm not. It's an indie studio, so I assume they're all Indonesian developers. Seems really promising. It's a really good trailer. It seems like if you look at Ozygames' like YouTube account, they first showed some like very rough stuff from like 2 years ago, and then they went silent for a while, and then they kind of did this announcement trailer just in this last week, and it's getting like 20-30,000 views, and I've seen a few other people like repost the trailer getting 20-30,000 views, so it's kind of, I won't say exploding, but it's getting some eyeballs on it. So again, Buramato, Buramato. It looks like a fun indie project, and I like to try to shout out little indie RPGs, especially from all corners of the world when we can here. So I thought it looked pretty fun. My guess is that it's still a ways out, because the team seems like they're pretty small, but it's on my radar definitely. It's a fun trailer.
Yeah, that's best of luck. I mean, yeah, it looks like a very ambitious project, especially for their.
Gives me a similar vibe to that one other indie RPG that was like heavily inspired by Xenoblade that was announced. Like I think it was like
that had a Kickstarter, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It was either like late 2023 or like early 2024. Was like properly shown
yeah. I forgot what it was called too, but
I remember talking about that game, but the title's escaping me. Unfortunately, we don't want to forget them. There are just so many that sometimes they slip.
Yeah.
And then this next one, I've seen a lot of people excited for. I don't think I'm quite in the right demographic, but maybe you are. If you grew up watching anime in the 90s in the West, you might have watched Samurai Pizza Cats, I suppose. I've never watched this. So I've heard of it. Like I've learned about it through osmosis. It's not something that I'm intimately familiar with. But
Okay,
a new
that game that we're talking about is Runa.
Yeah, I just found it too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Anyways, Samurai Pizza Cats.
Yeah.
So the developer Blast Zero and publisher Red Dunes is making a Samurai Pizza Cats. Like they call it an RPG. The gameplay looks more like search action, Metroidvania-ish, whatever you want to call it.
Basically.
Yeah. And apparently for this game, it's slated for 2026, so it's a ways out. They were able to get original voice cast for both the original Japanese cast and the original dub cast from a show that originally aired in 1990. So that is tenacity to the craft or whatever you want to call it. So I did not grow up watching Samurai Pizza Cats, so I don't look at this and get super excited, but it is a fun IP to revive, I suppose.
This announcement trailer might be like the modern definition of Soul, to be honest. It is such a fun announcement trailer. Like it's not like I'm like a super big Samurai Pizza Cats fan, but I've always appreciated it's like a whimsical 90s comedy anime, especially for like it was from an era where like it was common for the people who are bringing it to the West to not necessarily get the original Japanese script, so they didn't know like what material fully they were working with. So a lot of like that crossover in between like the releases of Samurai Pizza Cats, and I believe this is called Yoroiden Samurai Troopers in Japan. No, that's Ronin Warriors. Fuck, what was it called in Japan? Was it just Samurai Pizza Cats? I think it was.
No idea.
Yeah, but it was like they had that it's almost like a nonsensical like script because they didn't know what to really translate or fully have those materials. In Japan, it was Hyato Ninden Tiande. And then it is such a really unexpected but welcome surprise, especially coming from Tatsunoko, because it feels like Tatsunoko has been out of the scene for quite some time. And they even mentioned like with the Japanese cast, like you said, a lot of returning voice casting members, but one of them had to be recast. Seichiro Yamashita joins the cast as Tsukashi, taking over the role from Jorota Kosugi, his senior at the same talent agency. I think that's the only notable like significant cast change, but other than that, in between the English and Japanese voice cast, like it's like you said, very tenacity and commitment to like the source material. Like that's like a big respect to the source material, as well. And the way that they've animated this trailer and the game, like there's they released a very short, like 47-second video that says creating the animation of Samurai Pizza Cats, the game. They actually show like them like the hand drawings, like trying to like make the showing people that they're actually not doing this by computer. They're actually first animating it by hand using and then flipping through through the images, showing how the characters animate in order to translate those movements and animation to the screen digitally. So they're emulating how anime used to be like made old school in that video, and I'm like, holy shit, man! Like, you would think that they would use more modern methods. It's like, no, we're gonna
We're
go
committed.
back
Yeah.
and like make this as authentic as possible. Um, it's it's amazing, man. I really like that announcement trailer. And of course, they do like like Samurai Pizza Cats. Like, there's like those characters like are self aware. So, like even the make of the just like, man, they're crazy for trying to make a video game for a series that's been out of the loop for like 30 years. You know, it's like, yeah, you are. But I I already hope this project is successful and awesome for them. I'm already a fan and already hope that it does well for them. I hope the game is good, obviously, but man, I really, really, really want to play this game. It's such a cool out of nowhere announcement and project.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the line, like, I'm not sure I wanna play it, but I want it to succeed, sort of thing. And of course, I mean, I can't think of a game I wouldn't want to succeed. There's
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I know you mean.
and the studio is Dutch, so really like a worldwide effort. And I know
Mhm.
sometimes when, like, people who are not part of the original team want to revive an IP, that doesn't always turn out for the best, but everything that they've shown shows that they really are dedicated with the original cast on both sides of the pond, with the animation style that they're going with to make it as authentic as possible. So, seems like
Yeah.
their hearts are really in the right
It's
place.
just like when I see this game screenshots of this game, it's just like it's unbelievable how well been able to like translate that art style into the game itself, and like all the anime cutscenes that are all new
Mm.
just for this
I
game. Like, fuck,
I
man.
I gotta assume, like you gotta assume like how well like Cuphead sold was what ultimately led to
Oh
them
yeah.
being able to do this. Because then that game, last I checked, didn't it sell like over 7 million copies? And I think that might
That's
be
wow.
lower than. Let me
Oh,
Yeah,
check.
actually, like when I first looked at the gameplay, I was like, "This looks Metroidvania-ish," but no, it's actually more like Cuphead. You're right.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, good call. I have to imagine, yes, the success of Cuphead probably factored to like just green light. Um,
Mhm.
crazy, crazy. More projects like this, please.
So the Wikipedia page says that by the time it was released for the PlayStation 4 in July 2020, it reached 6 million sales. That's probably at 10 million by now then.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, yeah, crazy. Did they ever release that Cuphead show that they were doing?
Yeah, they did at both seasons.
Oh, I just that just completely flew by me. Okay, were they good or like did people like them?
They were okay.
Okay.
Just three more quick news things here before we wrap up. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I think we quickly talked about that game. It only released 2.5 weeks ago. Wait, yeah, 3 weeks ago, basically. Um, it broke the 1 million copy mark basically on day one, and it's past the 2 million copy mark a few weeks within a month from launch. So I don't think a surprise, but clearly a success. And we've already mentioned, I believe, with the 1 million that it had made back its development cost. So clearly a success for Warhorse.
Good on them. Yeah. Good job, Henry.
And then in terms of dates, for game dates, Gordian Quest, which is a deck building RPG, will be releasing on mobile devices on March 27th. It released on consoles and PC in 2022. And then to look forward for next week, we had the announcement of an upcoming Pokemon Presents, so basically a Pokemon Direct for February 27th. So of course, that'll be on. Let me grab the calendar here. That'll be on Thursday for us in the Western Hemisphere, and then we'll be able to report on that next week on the podcast. So obviously, the big thing that we'd like to see details on is the long announced Pokemon Legends ZA, because we've only got the one teaser from early 2024.
That was from
So,
Pokemon,
about a year ago.
basically Pokemon Day last year. So it's been a year.
Oh, okay. So it lines up. Okay, perfect. So yeah, almost certainly what we're gonna see. So we'll report on that next week.
Yeah, I guess one more minor note. I guess for people who are maybe sort of looking forward to the Shoji Meguro's game that he was working on, the Guns on Darkness, the one that got a Kickstarter campaign. Of course, people know Shoji Meguro is the composer of like popular Atlas games like the Persona series. That there's gonna be a demo for that coming up like in 2 days as of this recording, February 24th. So if you people want to see what Shoji Meguro has been developing for several years now, there'll be a demo up for that. Guns on Darkness.
And then, of course, next week on the podcast, a major talking point, of course, will be the upcoming release of Monster Hunter Wilds. So that'll release, like, I think, officially a day before the podcast records. So I'm sure we'll be talking a fair bit about that as our main topic for next week. And then, as always, as we keep saying, March doesn't really slow down. So we'll have plenty to talk about over the next couple of weeks. But I really like this episode of the podcast. We were able to go deep dive into several different games from several different genres, or not different genres, different types of RPGs, subgenres, I suppose. And from different IPs, some new games, remasters, long running series, etc. So really fun episode. Light on the news, but we had plenty to talk about, as you can tell by the fact that we still hit the 3 hour mark for this podcast.
Yeah,
But yeah, all of the features that we talked about. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
But the big one is next week, of course, the one that everyone is looking forward to.
So all the features that we talked about are up on the site. The Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, its review, Mikhail's companion piece for the Steam Deck, guides on that, of course, will be popping up. Adam and Cullen's Xenoblade Chronicles Cross preview. So everything that he talked about, we have listed as kind of like a listicle sort of thing up on the site, which will be updated when the game releases next month. James' Atelier Yumia preview piece, Scott's Celeste 2 preview piece, and then, of course, all the other news beats that we talked about are all up on the site. So you can find RPG Site on any of the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us then, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you all later.